What is up, everybody? We are back on a Friday night, May 1st. This week we've got Cassian Andor series updates. We got Clone Wars series updates. We're actually going to do battle over Star Wars battles in our Duel of the Fates. And, of course, we have, without, further ado, how will the Clone Wars end? That's going to be our main topic, and it's all coming to you right now.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. So, as you know, we've been watching a lot of the stuff that's been happening lately with Star Wars. I mean, we've got Clone Wars. We've got, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. We've been keeping up with The Mandalorian.
Yep.
And as you can see behind me and, of course, behind you, we've got our little Funko Pops. And interestingly enough, I ended up ordering some. Remember when I ordered all these?
Yeah.
I ordered some back in, I want to say, when was that I bought all these? Like February or something?
Yeah, around there.
Yeah. So I ordered a bunch of these things, right? And then I got this box in the mail the other day. And I'm like, what did I order? Because, I've been ordering stuff here and there. But
work and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't sure what it was. And I couldn't remember for the life of me. I'm like, what is this box? I opened the box, and it's all these 40th anniversary edition Pops from Empire Strikes Back. I got the Han Solo Carbonite.
Oh, wow.
I got the Bespin Han and Leia. I got, Luke and Yoda. Mm-hmm. I totally forgot that I actually ordered these things.
Wow. Yeah, you know what's funny that you bring up, that is because, before the show today, I had to send you that link, and I know you probably hadn't get a chance to read it just yet, but I
started to.
Somebody actually had the nerve and the galvanized gall to actually say that Empire Strikes Back is overrated. And, this is pretty much the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back, at least the month, it came out. So, I just find it hilarious. Listen to his points, or not listening, but reading his points. I'm just kind of like, yeah, man, I really don't see how you still feel like that's an underrated movie. Empire is probably, still quintessentially the best Star Wars movie to me.
Well, not only that, but a lot of people actually count it as the best sequel.
Yeah.
One of or the best sequel ever made. So it's kind of like, right, how can anybody say that that's,
But he goes on, man. He has this long thing. You know what, maybe we might cover it for the next podcast. We might actually be able to go in
that
depth
might be
into
fun.
That might be a nice, juicy argument to have.
Well, and it's funny because in between the time that we're doing these things, we basically have May the 4th.
Yeah.
Star Wars Day. So, we got today's...
Not Life Day, but Star Wars
Right.
Day.
Today is May the 1st. Then, of course, May 8th is when we're going to do the next one. So right in between there is that. So I'm thinking maybe we can cover a little bit of stuff that happens on Star Wars Day. And certainly we can tackle this crazy blasphemous thing that this guy wrote
yeah, man.
About how, Empire Strikes Back is overrated.
Yeah, it's insane. Absolutely.
Well, what was his whole deal? Is it...
I think he just pretty much, he really enjoyed, he even referenced the fact that it was called Star Wars. He's like, I know we're supposed to say A New Hope, but when it came out in 1977, it was just Star Wars, which is true. And, he was just pretty much, chronicling the events that happened, in A New Hope and how, great it was. But he didn't even like the opening crawl of Empire Strikes Back. that's how deep it got. He was like, although the rebels, but he's like, although, what do you mean, although? This guy, these guys beat, this planet-sized, space station that can pulverize a planet, in seconds, and, you're just saying, although. So it's just like, okay, give these guys some credit here. So
really he's
criticizing to that degree, and then he's, going on this whole diatribe about, just a lot of things where... it was slow, how they underutilized characters and all this other stuff. And, he didn't like, how Luke was being dealt with between, Yoda and Obi-Wan. And then, he hated the fact that this whole love thing. It's like, okay, well, when does the Empire strike back? Where? Where do they actually strike back? Because they haven't done anything,
Yeah, I can You know, it's funny because I can see to a degree maybe what he's talking about, but yeah, I don't know, man. That's starting to get me a little angry.
Yeah.
So before I get too crazy, what do you say we go to the Cantina, get
Yes.
ourselves a nice little drink, and cool off?
Perfect.
All right, let's do it. All right, what do we got for our first segment of the Cantina? You know, I love this segment because this is where anything goes. We can talk about whatever. Hey, and if you guys are watching right now, you end up liking this video, don't forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button without question so you guys can see all the content that we're going to come out with and chat with us. We're live right now. We are ready to talk to you guys. So as we're talking, you know, hop in the discussion with us. All right, what do we got first?
All right, so, you know, we've been talking a lot about Cassian Andor within the last few weeks, and, you know, we just keep getting more traction on this, which I'm liking. You know, of course, like, as just for those who may not be familiar with it, Cassian Andor takes place 5 years before the events of Rogue One, kind of chronicles a lot of different things, dealing with the character Cassian Andor, who's a pivotal character in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So now we actually have, you know, we've heard some, you know, the castmates, you know, that have actually joined, including the young lady, Genevieve, O'Reilly, I think that's her name.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one who plays Mon Mothma, but now we're actually getting into the writers and the directors and the showrunners of the thing.
You know, it's
really
amazing how we're actually getting more and more information. Like, first it was a ghost town, right? Like, we were getting nothing. Now, all of a sudden, we're just getting information, like, almost every day.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but, I mean, I just find it really, really surprising.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, Tony Gilroy, who co-wrote Rogue One, will also write, direct, and serve as a showrunner for this series. So that's cool. At least it's keeping some of that continuity going. Mm-hmm. So he already kind of knows the vibe and the feel. Because that's my thing. It's like, you know, you and I have always been preaching about this as far as, like, plan. And, you know, now, you know, and of course, a lot of this stuff comes down to the writing and then, of course, eventually the execution. So one of the writers on the show includes Dan Gilroy, who did Nightcrawler, Bo Willimon, who's done House of Cards, and Stephen Schiff, who's done The Americans. So, you know, it's pretty good writers on the show. And, you know, I really think that this is kind of where, you know, and I think this is definitely where a lot of people can feel a little bit more confident in some of the things dealing with Star Wars, because if you kind of know who's writing these shows, you kind of know their background, their character, and things like that, and their style, you kind of like, okay, now you might be able to kind of figure out kind of how the story is going to move. And now that you have someone who has the experience with Tony Gilroy being the showrunner who did Rogue One, you know, you kind of have that continuity, so he can kind of keep those guys, you know, on the right path. Like, no, this is not where we're going. And I think it's a great thing. I mean, I really think that this is kind of the big piece to any series being a success. We see what happened with The Mandalorian with Dave Filoni and Favreau. So those two as a pair work really well together. And I think Favreau is really good at directing, and I think Filoni is really good just having a whole wealth of just Star Wars knowledge and history by sitting at the feet of George Lucas. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, without question. I mean, it's funny because, and I think I pointed this out last week, but this is a series that I thought was cool in the concept, but I wasn't necessarily, like, overly excited about it. You know, like, I wasn't going, oh, man, I can't wait till the Cassian Andor series comes out. It was more like, hey, this could actually be cool depending on where they go, and I'm curious to see what they do with it. That's pretty much where I was sitting with the whole thing. Like, okay, let's see where it goes. But I have to say, as time goes on, I'm really starting to get amped up about this series.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I was kind of wondering where were they going to go with it, and I think, you know, once again, I've mentioned this before with The Mandalorian being more of a Western type of film, or series, I should say, and then now with the Cassian Andor, you know, it's kind of puts you in the mind of, from what I'm hearing, it's more like a Jason Bourne Mission Impossible thing. Not quite James Bondish per se, but maybe a little. But I'm just curious to see kind of how this character develops. Like Cassian Andor, we kind of saw him being kind of snippy with Jen Erso, you know. So
yeah, that's a big understatement.
Yeah,
actually.
so you know he's kind of has that that edge, like, okay, look, I don't have time to deal with you,
Yeah.
Even his first moments when we first saw him on Rogue One, he comes up to that guy, gets the information, blows him away, and then he takes off running into the night. And you're just like, wow, you've never seen that from a rebel soldier or a rebel, alliance personnel like that. So I think that's really cool, just seeing a different side of the rebellion, looking at them from a different lens. More, and you can understand why the Empire looked at the rebels like, well, this is why we don't like you guys, because you guys are just, some jerks. So,
well, and the thing is I don't necessarily want to see like a 9-year-old, Cassian Andor, but I would like to see a little bit about his separatist background.
well, yeah, I think they're going to cover that because, with this taking place 5 years before the events of Rogue One, that would definitely put you in the Clone Wars still. So,
Yeah.
maybe just coming out of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, because, well, I mean, I don't think so, because if it's what, 5 years before Rogue One?
That's right. It's 5 years before Rogue One.
Yeah, this is like after Episode 3. I mean, this is
yeah.
like way after the Clone Wars, which is what I'm saying. It's kind of like, but he's not exactly young in Rogue One, though, so.
Yeah, he's probably like maybe late 20s, early 30s.
Could be.
That's what he looks
Maybe
to be,
even like mid-30s. I mean, it could be like somewhere in there. But the thing is that during the Clone Wars, he was probably like maybe 17, 18, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I would like to see maybe. I mean, I'm trying to think if his family was a separate. If you guys know out there, let us know. But I mean, I can't remember if he was saying his family was separatist or if he was.
Well, either or. I think I believe it's kind of like almost like one and the same thing. I think he's a separatist because his family was. So it's kind of like one of those.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, no, that could be. But I mean, it would be interesting because one of the things that we never really understood was pretty much how the separatists started to integrate back into like a general society. Because if you think about it, we know that Palpatine orchestrated all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He basically created an enemy to fight so he can then get his power.
Right.
But the thing is that once the war was over and these separatists are now becoming part of the Empire, it's kind of like, did people... Because remember, the Empire was still part of the Republic, basically. It's like the Republic morphed into the Empire.
Right.
So did they have like... almost like an animosity or hatred towards former separatists, or did anybody, you know what I mean? It's like, did they just give it up or what?
Well, yeah, and I think that's the cool thing about this, because it kind of, like I said, I'm getting, I just feel it in the Force, if you will.
Uh-oh.
But I feel like it's going to be kind of like I said, a Jason Bourne 24-ish type of vibe, where it's like there are going to be so many different cliffhangers here, because I think when you're having that kind of sneaky spy infiltration, that this sets the groundwork for so much build up for a lot of different things, because you don't know how they're going to get out of these situations. You don't know who has this, and all the little plot details. I think are really going to be cool on this show. You think somebody's the good guy, they really turn out to be the bad guy, or vice versa, and so I'm really interested to see what a spy-ish film in Star Wars will look like.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, who is it going to be against? Because yes, you have the Empire, and obviously he's going to be part of the rebellion and all that. But it's like, are we going to see Krennic? It might. You conceivably could do that, or
Sure.
Oh man, what's the name of this guy? There was a guy in the book New Dawn. He was actually pretty cool. He kind of reminded me of Destro, the way they described him from G.I. Joe. He sort of had he was like a droid, basically. And so he had like a steel face or whatever. His name, oh man, I wish I can remember the guy's name. He was a really cool character, though. Unlike any of the other villains that we had seen in Star Wars. And they basically came up with this guy. So I'm wondering if maybe they're going to come up with somebody like that. Or are they going to use, one of the people that we're used to, like your Tarkins or your Krennics or,
I think they're going to kind of probably stay away from them. You probably will hear them mentioned, but I think they're probably going to stay away from...
I hope they invent somebody new. I really hope that they actually do kind of like what these novels have been doing and, invent somebody new.
Yeah, I think they're going to, or like, even with The Mandalorian, Moff Gideon.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like this,
perfect example, right?
Like that's just, he seems like a worthy adversary. And it's like, you have so many other, Imperial officers who, and of course this is at the height of the Empire pretty much. So it's like, sure, all these guys are rising through the ranks at this point. So, I mean, wouldn't it be cool if you saw like a young Captain Nita or something like that? Like,
well, either that or, and I've been saying this forever, guys, get Ray Sloan in there.
mm-hmm.
She's a prominent character in the new canon novels. It's like, and she's a really good character too. And I mean, they cover her from kind of like the end of the Clone Wars when she was still like a captain or whatever, all the way to when she became essentially a Grand Admiral. I mean, and we're talking like post Return of the Jedi here. So there's a lot that they could do, because when you have a character that spans that much history, and covers that many eras in Star Wars, it's like, it's time to feature. Look, if you're bringing Ahsoka out, there's no reason why you can't do that.
That's true. Valid point.
And what about you guys? Are you guys looking forward? Be sure if you're watching right now, chat with us. Let us know what you guys are thinking. About this whole Cassian Andor series, or whether you're looking forward to it, or what you think is going to happen. We'd like to know. All right, what do we have next?
Well, speaking of Clone Wars, we have one of our favorite Sith Lords has returned this season, of course, Darth Maul in the season 7 of Clone Wars. But not only did the character Darth Maul return, but Ray Park himself, the guy who actually played the live-action Darth Maul, actually came back to do a lot of computer generation work.
Yeah, the motion capture
capture work. Sorry, motion capture work for this really big, climactic battle that we saw last week with. I'm about to say Ray. You got me thinking about Ray Sloan with Ahsoka. So, I mean, that was a awesome battle for me. I really loved it. It was almost as good as the one she had with Vader and
that really was
Rebels.
Good. I mean, I was really happy about it. And again, I mean, it just goes to show you just realize how tragic Darth Maul's character really is.
Yeah.
Especially now when you get into that little piece, like he's actually trying to get somebody. And what was so heartbreaking was he had finally gotten Ahsoka to the point where it's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to team up with you. I'm going to help you do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, she asks him the question.
Right.
Which she doesn't like the answer. So now it's, we're going to fight again. And,
Yeah, he's just like, fine.
And that's why I can't wait to see tonight's episode.
Exactly.
Because, now that he's been captured or whatever, it's like, because I still say, and this is something that, whether they want to do it as the next animated series or, they could even have these guys pop up in The Mandalorian. But what I would love to see is Crimson Dawn to have some sort of essentially what would have been Solo 2. Because had Solo 2 been made, at the end of the Solo, it looked like that they were setting up, okay, Kira works for Maul, basically. And, they were going to go ahead and do this whole thing where you have Crimson Dawn and, then, of course, Han Solo was going to go and possibly get a job with Jabba the Hutt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I think if they had been able to make Solo 2, it would have been awesome. So I see no reason why they couldn't do this in either another animated series, which we know that they're working on one, or, do another movie. Or maybe a Disney Plus series or something.
The cool thing about Maul is that, like, and this was I'm really anxious to see, is that I'm really wondering, how did he know it's Anakin that the Emperor is grooming?
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing.
Because I'm just kind of like, all right, granted, I get that you're on the dark side of the Force, and maybe you can sense it more because you're already on the dark side, but, and you kind of almost wonder, like, what his end game is. Because, like, okay.
That was my thing.
Like,
my whole thing was when he made that offer to her, I'm kind of like, well, what are you trying to do? Because, okay, let's just say that you go and you overthrow the Emperor. What are you going to do?
Yeah, like, are you trying to take the Empire or basically the Republic for yourself now?
Yeah.
Because it's like, but then my thing is, like, do you even know that they're the same person? Like, does he know that Palpatine and Sidious are the same?
Well, he's got to be, because, for one, I mean, he kind of knew that, well, that's true. I don't know if he ever actually interacted with, quote-unquote, Senator Palpatine.
Right.
You know, it was always like he'd have the robes on or whatever, and yeah, I mean that's actually a good question.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I'm really interested, and it's funny because I was reading something that said that Darth Maul was really the beginning of the Rebel Alliance. Really, he's kind of like the guy who kind of really started or kind of begins to orchestrate it. Kind of in its infancy, and then of course it was kind of carried out.
Yes and no, because I mean, if you really look at it though, Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, all those guys were kind of putting that together around the same time, and I would credit them more with doing it because they were actually getting a collection of senators that thought that things were going a little bit too far with the war or whatnot, and it's like they're the true architects. But yeah, I mean, there could have definitely been a time where Maul could have been involved in that. I mean, how cool would that have been?
That's
if
what I'm
Maul
saying.
like became part of the Rebel Alliance, so now they basically have like a former Sith Lord. It's like that's something you never actually saw before. Honestly,
No, man. I mean,
it almost makes you want to rewrite history a little bit.
Yeah, man. Like talk about switching back, man. That'd be
yeah,
crazy.
that'd be crazy. But I mean, I do think though that out of not only respect for what Ray Park brought to the character, also the what's the word I'm looking for here? Legitimacy or whatever. It's almost like this always happens to me when I'm live, but essentially it gives you a little bit of that authenticity. That's the word. See, I knew I would think of it eventually. It gives you the authenticity to have him do the mocap for this stuff because it ties the animated character to the movie character a little bit more.
True, yeah. It's not just like some guy thinking of it. It's kind of like, no, this is really him, really doing this. And I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's what makes it so cool. And I love the fact that, he's still willing to do it. I mean, it shows that he's still...
And that he still can. I mean,
he still
it's been
can,
like 20 years.
Yeah, he's still in phenomenal shape. He still can pull off a lot of these moves. And, it's just, he's always been, a very cool martial artist to me. So, yeah, man. And I love the fact that, even kind of like he's kind of fed up, with a lot of stuff too.
Absolutely,
at this point.
Yeah.
So he's just like, you know what, like, and I really, like I said, I just really want to know his end game. Like, I mean, of course, he wants to kill Kenobi, but like outside of that, like, what is the big thing?
Yeah, because especially when you start to tie this stuff into what we saw with Rebels. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, well, what are you trying to do exactly? Because it seems like some of the stuff, like let's just take the Kenobi vengeance thing. Okay, well that seems like it would interfere a little bit. Like, okay, you're teaming up with Ahsoka. You're going to overthrow the Emperor. It was because if you really watch that last episode, it was almost like he was willing to team up with Kenobi to help fight Anakin.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. He's always...
So you're kind of like, well, are you just... I mean, is it the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation? Or, are you going to be like, if maybe Kenobi was kind of cool, maybe you all go out for a drink afterwards and join us in the cantina? Or, I mean, it's... You got to wonder, like, what would have happened? And those are the kinds of things that really excite me about that, is that... And then you start to think of, well, I kind of wish they would redo Episode 3 a little bit, It's... I mean, that's what I would like to see happen. I mean, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and the fact that we've already come to the point where we've already we're kind of overlapping into Episode 3 already with the death of Dooku and everything like that. So I'm just really, which kind of brings us up to our whole main topic. We'll have later, but yeah, I'm just really, really curious. But I mean, I'm hearing some great things and some shocking things that are going to happen in this episode tonight. So I can't wait to when we pack this all up and we can go home and really check this out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it should be actually a really cool experience. And I'm really hoping that, they continue to do things like this.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Hayden Christensen, for example, did actually want to reprise his role as the voice of Anakin Skywalker. But as you pointed out, when I was like, I wonder why they didn't want to do that. I mean, did they really think like, no, man, that's all right, after the prequels. But, you did bring up a good point where it was like, well, dude, I mean, imagine how much money that would have been. They could pay this other guy, Matt, I keep forgetting this guy's last name, Landers or something like that, where, he sounds like him, and I mean, let's face it, as long as you can do a reasonable imitation,
Yeah, you can convince people.
convincing, then I think it's cool. But other than that, I do think though that it's nice when they actually tie in the characters a little bit with the movies, because one of the complaints I've always had about Star Wars is the fact that they don't seem to do a very good job of tying the canon together.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they kind of play loose and fast with the continuity, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, they're notorious for that in the novelizations of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, man, what? And I get it. A lot of times they don't get these scripts, so you give the draft that you basically have to the writer, and then they flesh out the story. And then, of course, you're making a movie, and there's just changes that are made whenever you make a film, and we all understand that. But then why have them work on it in the beginning?
Yeah, you might as well just wait till afterwards.
You might as well wait till the script's locked down, because, look, there's still enough time. If you give the person, like, the basic outline, and then you fill in the details, but that, I'm sure that's, like, another topic for another time. But what do we have on our actual next topic?
Well, the next topic, we're actually going to talk about someone that we've never really talked about before. But as of late, this person has kind of resurfaced, and that's the big question. Is this person still alive? And that's Yaddle. So.
Yeah, and there she is. Look at her down there.
Her green glory.
Yep. Just sitting in that chair.
So the cool thing about Yaddle, is that, like, she was actually, of course, she's a Jedi Master, and she actually sat on the Jedi Council. And so if you look, for those of you who choose to go and, go back to watch The Phantom Menace, she's actually sitting, on the council. I think she's who is she? I think she's near, like, Even Peel. I think that's who she's.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it was
near.
funny because this is the thing that I find really hilarious about all this stuff that's going on with The Mandalorian right now, because everybody's going psycho over the fact, like, oh, Baby Yoda, this whole thing, and it's like, you guys do remember there was a full-grown other person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know. But, hey, we actually got a comment. I'm going to put it up here. It's from Deep Dishy. I'm convinced that Yaddle was just a fever dream George Lucas had one night. Let me put that up there. All right, there we go. There it is.
Dream.
Yeah, let me move it up, because actually that's the one thing that I didn't really do is come up with a spot here. Here we go for our comments to pop up. But yep, I got it up here. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to be honest. I agree. I think that it's just like, what was he thinking? Well, you got, who is Yaddle? I mean, do you even have the answer to that?
Well, yes, I do.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Well, so of course, born in the year 509 BBY, Yaddle is trained in the ways of the Force.
Look, he can read on the internet, everybody.
Hey, it's a skill.
Well, we never exactly claimed to be, like, experts here, even though I have been a Star Wars fan since '77. Just saying.
So she eventually graduated to the Jedi Knight, and then she, of course, promotes to Master, and at some point trained fellow Jedis. And basically, Yaddle was assigned to the Council, and on matters there was a matter when presented by Qui-Gon Jinn when he brought Anakin Skywalker before the Council, and they refused to let him be trained. This decision was later reversed after Qui-Gon's death at the hands of Darth Maul. Yaddle was no longer part of the Jedi Council during the Clone Wars, with Jedi Master Shakti taking her seat.
Okay, that makes sense, because if you watch Attack of the Clones, she's suddenly nowhere to be seen.
Right, and so there's different things.
So what's up with that?
So there's different things. So I was reading that there's a comic out there, and I can't recall the name of it, but
there's a comic that actually has Yaddle in it?
Yeah, well, apparently there's a comic that had Yaddle in it, and she actually sacrificed herself to save her, I think one of her, like, Padawans, or another one of the I guess somebody from that whatever mission they went to go rescue. So you have that, but then you also, the big thing is right now is that because we don't see her, we don't know if she survived the Clone Wars. And a lot of people are speculating that she's the mother of the asset, from the Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Well, before we do that, Deep Dishy's got... So it's all part of the charm of the prequels. I have a lot of problems with those films, but that doesn't stop me from loving them. Yeah, and we feel the same exact way. I mean, sometimes we like to take the wind out of the sails of certain things, in Star Wars. But look, that's why we're doing this. We're absolutely huge monster Star Wars fans. I mean, I myself, you've even read a lot of them. We read all the books, the comics. We try to keep up with this stuff. I mean, it is. It is part of the charm, and actually some of the fun, I think, and you and I have been doing this for a long time. After all, this whole show is based on you and I just having conversations about Star Wars and people coming up to us and go, I think other people might actually enjoy watching you guys do it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Yaddle is only 477 years old.
Now, see, that's another thing that I find a little strange, too, is so... We know Baby Yoda is like 50, and he's essentially a toddler. Mm-hmm. So you got to wonder, like, at what point do these people reach adulthood, and and what's their development like?
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, and that's why people are speculating that. So the speculation is that, and this is why everybody's so, I guess, hellbound on trying to acquire the asset. i.e. Baby Yoda.
I swear if I ever have kids, I'm going to start calling them the asset. Hey, bring the asset along with us.
Did you feed the asset?
Yeah, right.
The asset needs changing.
That's right.
But so the thing is that the reason why Moff Gideon and the kind of the remnants of the Empire are so pretty much like hellbound on trying to like acquire Baby Yoda is because, one, there are not too many of his species that are like around at any given time. Like only one or two or a couple are born every so often. And so that's the reason why they want to get their hands on this, because they know, of course, the power that it can actually wield.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact of the matter is that, okay, well, Yoda and Yaddle being the only two male and female of that species, they had to procreate to keep their species alive. So that's kind of like, of course, breaking that whole Jedi dogma of attachments, but it's like for the sake of their species, they may have had to do that. So that's what everyone is thinking, that when the Mandalorian is going to take the asset or Baby Yoda back to his homeworld or wherever that may be,
Yaddle's going to be there?
That Yaddle's going to be there.
Hence our segment, Yaddle Returns.
There you go.
Now I'm up to speed. See, I wasn't...
He wasn't connecting the dots. I know.
Look,
I just put it out there.
Put it out there. I did my due diligence and put it in our show notes and got it all ready. I'm like, okay, I don't know where he's going with this. I'm kind of looking forward, just like you guys. I'm like, okay, hey, it's news to me.
Yep.
So the whole idea. Well, you know what? It would make sense. I mean, it does make sense, and it also makes use of a character that, because it happens in Star Wars a lot too, where you get these characters that just. They're there, they play somewhat of a role, and then, you just don't hear from them again. And then it's up to us to actually, fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, here's an example. So, coworker and good friend Doug, he basically brought up to me today that, he'll do this every once in a while, by the way. He'll just, we'll be at work or whatever, and he'll just look at me and he'll just say like this question, and it's usually stuff that I'm struggling with. Like, man, I got to up my game as a Star Wars fan. He goes, hey, I'm like, what? He goes, how did Rey become such an amazing pilot? And I don't know. Because, I started thinking, well, there's
but she never left Jakku, so.
Never left Jakku. She was dumped on it. It's a desert planet. She's a scavenger. And he was like, look, I can hang with the fact that maybe there's certain common, but, she's like in the Millennium Falcon for like 10 minutes, and she's just doing all these like crazy things that even amazing pilots can't do. So,
Well, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. She was, the possibility, here's a possibility. So she was under the care of Unger Plot.
Yeah, okay,
So-
keep going, because I was going there.
So, and he was always trying to acquire different, stuff. So, that's basically like his kid. So, I mean, if he's going off on these little missions, he's probably had her with her the whole time.
I was saying that, and I also said that, there's also, like, in-atmosphere ships.
Yeah.
That, you can learn to fly, and maybe there weren't, but it's true. The Falcon's a little bit different. But, here we got another one. So,
Yep.
he likes the theory, but he's not sure that the Mandalorian writers are brave enough to do that. And you're probably right, honestly. Because, I mean, it's kind of like they have taken a little bit of they've taken some chances. Like, I actually think that the fact that they did the whole Baby Yoda thing in the first place,
Yeah, man. I'm
it was
surprised.
kind of a gutsy little move.
Well, see, my thing is, you almost have to, like, once you introduce a character like a Baby Yoda, like, you have to give it purpose. I mean, unless you immediately kill him, like, you have to give this character purpose because everybody knows. So it's like now, what I'm saying? Like, everybody knows who
here's a
Yoda
question,
is.
though.
So.
But here's the thing, though. Do you actually think this is a good one? So I'm actually breaking my arm, patting myself on the back here. But do you think they actually expected Baby Yoda to be the phenomenon that he turned out to be?
Definitely.
Yeah, I kind of lean toward that
Definitely,
too.
because you gotta look at it. It's like, okay, one, you look at Yoda, he's one of the most beloved characters of all time.
Yeah.
No, not just in Star Wars, but literally in all of cinema. So then, now you introduce him like this cute, cuddly version of this old wise Jedi man. I mean, like,
well, Deep Dishy agrees. Can almost guarantee that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't have the toys ready to go. But
well, and that's what they actually have one actually coming out right now. That's like animatronic. It actually like moves and does all the like the little Baby Yoda stuff. So the cool thing is, like, look, people have a soft spot for old people and babies. and
animals.
And animals. So those are the top three things. Like, you can't do harm to any three of those because people just go psycho, and understandably so.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, either old people are like, oh, they're so cute, they're so old, and look at them, or the same thing to say about a baby, and quite frankly, they're just the same. They both drool on themselves, and
Yeah,
anyway,
and I mean, that species kind of has like a little lizard-like thing going, so you really covered the top three right there.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. What about you guys? I don't even know. What
you
were
happy
we
to
talking about? Oh, yeah.
Yaddle.
Oh my God,
Are you happy?
I've lost track.
Are
Yeah,
you hoping?
you do it.
Are you
You
hoping
do
to see Yaddle return? Are you hoping that she pops up in the Mandalorian and that she's Baby Yoda's mommy?
All right. I think it's time for us to fight.
Uh-oh.
What do you think? What do we got next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates. All right. So this week on Duel of the Fates, yes, Miyake hands.
Yes.
Now, which was the most epic battle? Or the more epic battle, I should say.
Yeah, now you got three of them. You really threw me for a loop on that one because usually, just so you guys know, we only do like two. It's like this or that kind of thing. But
yes,
this time you've got like three battles going, right?
I almost did four. But I was like, let me not be hasty. So,
yeah, remember, I only got so much room for our graphic.
I know.
All right.
So the Battle of Endor, the Battle of Naboo, or the Battle of Scarif? Which was the more epic battle, in your opinion?
I'd say Scarif. I'm going to say Scarif hands down, and here's why. Because not only was it a somewhat intense, like it wasn't necessarily Battle of Endor intense as far as the space battle goes, but it was fairly close. But you had the space part of it, right? And they were trying to get into the shield. But then you had the actual in-atmosphere part where you had X-Wings, Y-Wings, and all this stuff, and they were actually in the atmosphere of the planet. Then you had a ground battle going that was somewhat reminiscent of Hoth, where you had, they were pulling out all the stops. So you literally had this like crazy war movie kind of thing going where you just had this multi-tiered battle. And it's crazy. Look, I know what everybody's going to say, and I get it. The Battle of Endor is hands down probably one of the best space battles ever depicted on film. I will not argue that fact. If you guys share that fact or that opinion, I will not argue that. But as intense as that is, yeah, I mean, okay. I know you might be able to catch me on the fact that, yeah, but they had a little bit of a ground battle too, and they did. But but it wasn't war movie like the Scarif battle. The Naboo battle was somewhat intense, but it was also played a little bit for laughs with Jar Jar, and I mean it was.
I didn't like the Naboo thing. I mean,
the Naboo. Well, first of all, Naboo looks like Teletubby Land.
Exactly.
Let's be honest.
Yes.
I kept expecting like Tinky Winky to come out and lob like a blue marble-looking grenade or whatever those things are.
Look at the sun; it's like a baby.
Yeah, exactly right.
No, I mean, I would have to probably agree with. It's hard because here's the thing. And I tried to look at this from
a certain point of view. Sorry, I had to say it.
Not quite, but but I'm kind of looking at it from these different angles. Okay, so
yeah, you talk. There's some people on here that are still trying to find us live. It's kind of like this is what happens sometimes. You create an event. We're using Restream to go to both Twitch. By the way, Deep Dishy's watching us on Twitch. Make sure you tell all your friends to, subscribe to us and watch us. But, yeah, I mean, because of that, it's like I created the event in YouTube, but then, and I've only managed to do it once, when we went live on YouTube, it actually created another event with the same title, same thumbnail and everything. So I think the people that were looking for us on one can't find it. So
yeah, I got it.
Go for it.
So... The following comments are views. No, but I'm just playing. So, okay, when you look at the Battle of Endor and Battle of Scarif, they're very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And I kind of looked at it from the standpoint of, like, which had the most, like, gravitas to it. So, like, on one hand, the Death Star is already complete, or almost complete, I should say, for the Battle of Endor. And so then now you have... Look, we're not trying to have another Death Star roaming around, so we got to get rid of this thing while we can.
Yeah.
But you got all this hordes of ships. But then on the Scarif side, it's like, okay, well, we're trying to prevent
this thing from even being built. Exactly.
Well, it was already built, and that was the thing.
Well,
but you're just trying to get the plans on how to destroy this thing.
Right.
So it's just kind of like those two moments are like, so like which one? But I think overall, like I think Scarif had more.
Well, here's a question, though.
Okay.
I mean, not to just bull right over your whole point, although it wouldn't be the first time, would it?
Nope.
You had that look on you like, yeah, okay, whatever.
I'm used to it.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing, though, and this is wait, do I remember the point I was going to make? Hold on. Don't tell me. Oh, yeah. So are we talking about when we say best battle? And usually I try to clarify this before I blurt out my answer, but
right.
Are we talking... So it's not just the best battle, like physically, but it also has like the most emotional weight to it, or something like that. Are you factoring that in there too?
Yeah, I'm factoring and that's what I'm saying. I'm factoring all components to it, like even the way it was shot, and so that's what I'm saying. Like when you look at Scarif, I think was better shot, like in the sense of it had that wartime. I mean, it felt like you were like in Vietnam or like on the Panama Beach or something like that. So you had that whole Stormfront coming up, Death Troopers, the whole Chirrut Imwe thing where he's going out.
I mean, that's what I'm saying,
it was
man.
like
It's multifaceted.
It was the emotional part of it was like very heavy, watching everybody getting picked off, and then of course eventually seeing everybody, like all the heroes died pretty much.
Yeah.
And then of course you always have the greatest climactic end to me, like in all the cinemas when Vader just runs roughshod throughout the whole like rebellion, in a one little corridor.
I didn't even bring that up. But Deep Dishy,
he's back.
Yeah, he's back, and he's basically Scarif. Looked really nice. Can't argue with that. But a lot of suspense was deflated, and I agree with this comment, by the way, because a lot of it was you did know the outcome, and this is actually one of the issues.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, this is one of the issues that I kind of had with the prequels in a way too. Is as much as I enjoyed them. I mean, we did point out the problems that we had with them, but as much as I enjoyed them, I will say that, there was a slight issue with the drama part of it because you kind of knew where it all had to end.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you never worried about whether or not Obi-Wan was going to make it out of a battle or not.
Right.
Same thing with the Clone Wars. I mean, you just kind of know, well, all right, we know what's going to happen. And I could see this with the Battle of Scarif, too, is that you kind of know how it turns out.
Yeah.
But I will say that said, though, that, and this actually strengthens the point for me, by the way, is that you had a situation where even though you knew the outcome, there was still some truly nail-biting moments.
And it was
like the way they presented it,
Yeah, the way yeah, exactly. The way they kind of presented it made you like wonder, like, man, they might get this off,
right?
know?
Or it's kind of like, okay, man, I know that they're going to get these plans, but I don't see how that's going to happen. And a lot of times that'll happen on things where, you kind of know the outcome, but it's almost the fun of getting there. You're like, how are they going to do this?
Yeah, and then on top of that, like, all right, there were some surprises. In the sense of like, okay, you really didn't know what were going to happen to the heroes. Like, okay, are they going to get captured? You knew some were going to die, but
no, I agree with you because there's people out there that are saying things like, "Oh, well, you knew they all had to die." I'm like, well, not necessarily. They could have, Ahsoka out or something, right? Like gone to another whole area of, the thing.
So he says visually, there's no arguing that the Scarif was the best, just not with effects and presentation. But the light is in my eye.
You're not as good at reading these things as I am. There's no arguing Scarif was the best, not just with effects but presentation too. And
in my opinion,
yes. And that's it. I mean, there's so many different facets to it that I think that they did right that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that pretty much anybody could. I mean, maybe there's somebody that really loves the Naboo battle. I don't know. But I think we can all pretty much agree that it's really between Endor and Scarif here.
Definitely. I think the thing that ruined, and this is the thing, I think it would have been a closer battle if it wasn't for the Ewoks.
Well, yeah. There is that, but the other thing
had
too
there been
is
Wookiees like they originally were supposed to be.
Right, exactly. That would have been cool. But
yeah.
and here's the thing that I would add too, because and this, one of my favorite battles forever has been actually the Battle of Hoth.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually been one of my favorite battles of Star Wars, and a lot of it is just because it was a ground battle. It was in snow, it was kind of different or whatever. And I thought that the Scarif battle actually captured that. Like, it kind of felt like Hoth on a beach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We never saw, like, a beach thing. I mean, just the, like,
I kind of wanted to visit there, man.
Yeah, like Deep Dish said. I mean, like, visually, like, this thing, man, was just, like.
Just crazy cool.
Crazy cool. And then, like I said, the way it was shot, the action of it all, even, like, before they even got there, like, when they were on Jeddah. And just that whole little mini battle they had there, where it was almost kind of like it felt like you were like downtown Iraq somewhere.
That. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man, you got snipers coming from the rooftops and these. I mean, it was just crazy, and it's like that's what I'm talking about.
That's exactly.
So I definitely would go with Scarif on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Scarif on this one. Sounds like Deep Dishy's going with Scarif on this one.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you. And anybody else is watching, I mean, feel free to jump in the chat, have the conversation with us. Or, hey, look, if you guys just want to sit here and just watch us talk about Star Wars, that's cool, too. Just make sure that you hit the like, subscribe, follow, whatever you're watching this on, whatever they want you to do that keeps you glued to what we're doing, just kind of do that. All right.
All right.
What are we doing?
So next we have From a Certain Point of View. All right. Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, so for all you guys who may be new to this or whatever, this is basically our feature topic. So when you actually see the title of the thing or whatever, this is it. This is what we're talking about. This is the main topic. Even though we have been known to like talk forever. Like, it'd be like, how long have we been doing this now? Like almost an hour?
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was one time we did the show.
The 2-hour one?
Yeah, the 2.5-hour one.
Yes.
Where it was an hour in, and we were still like on the first Cantina segment.
Yeah.
I mean, that was insane. But that's the kind of stuff I like, man. I mean, look, we're here for a while. And, Twitch guys, they're hardcore. They want to watch the stuff for, a few hours. Now, generally speaking, when they say, hey, have like 3 or 4 hour streams or whatever, it's usually because they're gaming or doing something or whatever. But you know what? It's a Friday night. My favorite thing, your favorite thing.
We're quarantined.
Yeah, exactly. We're quarantined anyway. So why not, man? Let's keep this going as long as possible. We will. I mean, as long as you guys want to chat and talk, we're here, man. All things Star Wars.
Yes, sir. All right. So how will the Clone Wars end? So this is the big question. You know, we're coming up on it. Like, we only have, after tonight, we only have one more episode left.
Yeah, we're on the final two, and
and
one of the two have been released today.
Yeah, so
hey, have any of you guys seen tonight's Clone Wars episode? Just asking for a friend.
Don't tell us what happens. In
yeah,
the
I mean,
chat.
don't
spoil it, please.
Don't totally spoil it. Just let me know if you guys actually saw
it. But yeah, man, I've just been wondering. So let's just kind of take it back now.
Okay.
All right. So when we first kind of open up with season 7, we get the Bad Batch, and we kind of see that whole group of mercenary, kind of like almost, I call it the A-team, pretty much, of clone troopers. And so we kind of follow them on a couple of different missions, and then after that, that's when we started getting to the whole story of Ahsoka and what's been going on with her. My first question: do you think that, although the Bad Batch, I did enjoy watching those, do you think that we should have opened up with it, or do you think they should have covered that at all? We should have got straight to Ahsoka.
No. I agree. So Deep Dish knows blasphemy. You haven't seen any of the Clone Wars? You know what? So, like, when you say none, you mean, like, 0?
Like, not the movie, not any of the up seasons, or just not
like
season 7?
You know what? That's cool, though, because I'll tell you something. So, a lot of times, I'll share Star Wars with my mom. In fact, my mom regularly watches, our stuff. She's probably watching now. And it was one of those things where, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, I really highly encourage you to make the effort to go check out the Clone Wars.
Yes.
And Rebels, too, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. It's not so much just because they're really good shows. There's a lot of canon stuff.
A lot of good content that connects. A
lot of stuff that connects stuff. Yeah, and I mean, yes, you could technically just watch the movies and be fine. I mean, that's true. But you're really missing out on a lot of cool Star Wars stuff if you don't watch the Clone Wars, especially the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And even Rebels.
Yeah, I mean, you really see kind of like the birth of Darth Maul. You kind of see the birth of a lot of different things. You hear a lot of different concepts as far as the Force, how that's explained. And a lot of different. I mean, there's so much rich information that you get by watching the Clone Wars. So, Deep Dish, while you're quarantined, staying safe and washing hands.
Okay,
hey, watch it.
Exactly. And right, not because of lack of interest, but having had time, and I get it. I mean, there was actually, you kind of ran into that problem at first because I was a little bit ahead of. Like, he and I both saw the movie together.
Yep.
We went to the theater and saw it, checked it out. I wasn't really that nuts about it. Like, I've seen it again recently, and it's kind of cool. Get to that in a second. But I was ahead, I think, by almost a full season.
I think, yeah.
Or
a
no.
season and a half, actually.
Yeah, because then you started watching it when it was like in reruns or something.
No, we started watching it together, and then we were pretty much on the same pace. But then, like, something happened where I couldn't, and I fell behind.
You fell behind, that's what it was.
And I was trying to play, I couldn't catch up fast enough.
Yeah, you can never catch up, and then it ended right. And then
so I just waited until, like, it was all done, and then I was like...
That's right.
Yep.
That's what... See, now I remember. But yeah, and here's the thing. And so now, of course, because my mom had never really seen it, and, the more she's been listening to and watching our show, she's been kind of getting more into Star Wars and asking more questions. So I said, well, okay, I want to rewatch the Clone Wars anyway because, when I watched it, this is like back when it was on, like 2008, 9, 10, back then. And it's kind of like all this stuff has been popping up, and, you'll read stuff online where it's like, oh, yeah, you remember in the Clone Wars, this happened? And I'm like, no, because I only remember bits and pieces of it, actually. So watching it again last night, just watched an episode that I think was actually the beginning of the Bad Batch. Now, I don't think it's the same people. Well, who is in the Bad Batch?
Hunter.
Tech or something?
Hunter, Tech. I'm trying to think of the big guy.
It's a quiz.
Is it Crusher?
Crusher or Smasher or I don't know.
I think it's Crusher or something.
If anybody out there knows, let me know. But so this original Bad Batch, they were having problems passing the test because they weren't working as a team, and and this whole thing, and it was like Echo, Fiverr, it was like a lot of these clones that we got to know after a while, and it was the origin of them.
I think we lost the stream.
You think so?
I think it broke.
Uh-oh. No, I don't know. I mean, hopefully not. Try refreshing it. I love technical problems.
See, this is what we need tech from the Bad
Yeah,
Batch.
right? Well,
there we go.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay, so we're good. All right. Anyway, so here's my whole take on everything is that I think the whole Bad Batch thing. Okay, so it looks your deep dishy said everything looks good on his end. Good. Yes, and actually,
appreciate it.
If you see any problems with the stream or whatever, let us know in the chat, and we can work on fixing it. But I think one of the things that's cool about the whole them starting with Bad Batch and then going into the Ahsoka thing was the fact that it sort of reminds you, because let's not forget that this is called the Clone Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's starting by bringing in these clones and it's easing you into that.
Okay.
And I mean, the more that I'm watching, because like I'm in the middle of season 2 now, or actually I'm coming toward the end of season 2, and there's so much stuff that I'm like, man, I forgot that they reference this and they do that, and I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Like deep dishy, like if you are, looking forward to the High Republic era like we are, which is pretty much takes place before, 400 years before the events of Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
So there's an episode where they're on a planet that has a bunch of people from that era, but they're all dead. Like there's like one big huge battle, but they're finding their lightsabers and stuff. The same stuff that you see on the covers of the new books that are going to come out. Those items are still found on those battlegrounds. So like I'm saying, it's a lot of connective tissue that you're going to see in the Clone Wars.
The only thing that I would say that you could skip if you wanted, even though I like it, is Star Wars Resistance.
Oh, you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, the one, I mean, it offers up some stuff that, I mean, it doesn't offer up anything really super crazy in canon. It does tie into some of this stuff, though. Like, it ties heavily into The Force Awakens, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, I haven't finished watching the second and final season of it, but I think it might even run up into The Last Jedi, too. But I would definitely say, yes, Clone Wars, number one, must watch it. And what's cool about Season 7, this current season that we're in now, that we only have, one episode left, is the fact that it actually, it's in Episode 3.
Yeah.
Episode 3 is happening, over here, and then Clone Wars Season 7 is happening over here, and it's simultaneous.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I remember were speculating, a while ago or whatever, that maybe it would butt, right up. We were always hoping that, the final scene of Clone Wars would go right into the first scene, very similar to how Rogue One goes into A New Hope. That's what you and I thought was going to happen.
Exactly, but
I had no idea that this would happen.
Exactly, and that's why I'm asking this question, because now that we're into, how is this going to end?
Oh, yeah, I guess it does kind of...
You see what I'm saying? Because okay, we know with, for those who watch Rebels, okay, we know Maul survives because he ends up in Rebels. I keep saying Rebels.
Well, there was some of that.
So,
see, I was going to be really smart, too, when you're like, yeah, how will the Clone Wars end? I was going to say, well, probably with Episode 12. I know, it's terrible. Sorry,
I hate it here. But, so, I'm just kind of trying to figure out, okay, well, now we're at, like you said, it actually overlaps into Episode 3. So now we're at the point where Dooku has been killed by Anakin when they tried to rescue the Chancellor. So it's like, okay, that's happened. Now Darth Maul has been captured. Okay, so how does he get out of this?
And not only that, it's they didn't take Maul back to, Coruscant, yeah, because, I mean, he never got to interact or anything. I mean, unless they just, that's happening over here while these guys are over here kind of thing, but...
Yeah, and then just like I said, I'm just worrying about, okay, with Anakin, okay, are we gonna are there going to be some nuggets and seeds dropped into Obi-Wan's mind about the future of Anakin Skywalker, or like, and just where does Ahsoka go now? Like, okay, she's already been kind of excommunicated, or she kind of pretty much left, and then she pops up again in Rebels. But all right, how do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you really tie this off?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, especially, see, it would have been a lot better if, well, I won't say that because I actually really love what they're doing with it, but it would have been easier. Let me put it that way. It would have been easier if they had actually just butted it up against very much Rogue One into New Hope style.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they're intertwining the two, it's going to be a little complicated, but I think what they're going to do is they're going to take all the what I would call non-essentials, right? Those are the people that we don't see on screen in Revenge of the Sith, and they're going to put them in their own. So, okay, Ahsoka maybe might help Mandalore or something. Oh, yeah, that's another reason why you should watch the Clone Wars. Well, Rebels too, actually, is because if you're into the whole Mandalorian thing, they go like way in depth into the Mandalorians,
History,
the whole history, the dark saber that you guys saw at the end of the Mandalorian season 1. That actually, you get to find out all about that in Clone Wars season 2, I think.
And then we could definitely get it in Rebels.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. Rebels is where it really makes its appearance. But, yeah, I don't know.
You know, because my thing is, because you have to, like, okay, you have,
it's
you
like
have
people
to
are
write
tuning in
Ahsoka.
going, yeah, I wonder how it's going to end. We're like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, we don't know because
we don't know. I mean, look, we're not Lucasfilm employees here, guys.
Yeah, it's just more so like, okay, I'm just trying to speculate. Like, okay, where does Ahsoka go at this point?
Well, and because we do meet her again in Rebels.
But see, I'm thinking like, I think what we're probably going to see is Grievous. I have a feeling Grievous,
but he's dead.
No, Grievous?
Yeah, Obi-Wan killed him. Oh, you're talking about... Now I'm up to speed.
There you go.
Okay.
So,
hey, man, you know what? It's like everywhere now.
I know,
it's like,
man.
wait, when did this happen again? And that's the problem that I'm thinking. It's not really a problem so much. It's like you really got to keep track because with Star Wars now, what they seem to be doing, and I hope they get away from this after a while, but they got all these different stories overlapping the same time periods.
Yeah.
And I could see them getting into a trap. You know, I mean... I know.
The pun.
I'm sorry. I didn't say it. But, I mean, the thing is that I'm thinking that you might see a situation where eventually they're going to paint themselves into a corner. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that...
If they do, Doug will find it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I got to get him on the show one of these days.
I think what we're probably going to see is like a shift between now. It's like, okay, Dooku's dead. Grievous has kind of fled or whatnot. So now it's pretty much like, okay, the hunt for Grievous is about to start. I think that's basically
well,
where
but here's
we're
the
at.
thing, and this is where my point stands a little bit, though, because now I don't know what's happening on today's episode.
Mm-hmm.
I always find it terrible that we end up watching these episodes like maybe an hour and a half after we're done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's kind of like, oh, man, I kind of want to go back on and talk about it now, you know?
Right.
But, hey, you know what we'll do?
Well, we could do that with the last one.
Well, yeah, but I think what we should do instead of doing that is we need to just do a review show. Like, actually do a separate stream that's like Clone Wars review, kind of like what we do with Mandalorian. If you guys haven't had a chance to see that, it's on our YouTube channel. We actually have one of the playlists. We reviewed the entire season 1 of Mandalorian. We did like 2 episodes at a time because we were recording bi-weekly. We weren't live at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So what we could do is once the Clone Wars wraps, we can do a per-episode review. And in fact, what might be really cool, it'll be a little work though, but it'd be worth it, is actually go back for the movie, then season 1, episode 1, 2, and actually do reviews
on each season
of each season, like a little discussion.
Wow, that would be some time.
Yeah,
but
but my point is, sorry, I digressed, is that the episode that from last week, Obi-Wan had just traveled to Utapau, which means he was about to kill Grievous.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know like how much time is transpiring between episodes.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'm just assuming in tonight's episode he's dead.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well, see, then my thing is like once again, like my biggest questions are like, because you really think about it, like, does Palpatine even know Maul is still alive? Because technically,
I know.
Technically, he has two apprentices at this point.
Well,
at one point,
kinda. Well, no.
Well, because he was kind of.
But I mean, what was that?
I don't know. I sense it too.
You didn't hear that?
I heard it.
I heard a beep.
Me too.
Did you all do anything out there? Hey, man, I mean, just so you know, we're using Ecamm Live, which is, kind of a new thing for us. We've been going through all these other ones. We've had some anybody that's watched us over the last, 3 weeks as we've forayed into this whole streaming thing have known that there's been some very interesting experiments. So, yeah.
A disturbance in the force.
Disturbance in the force.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes. But, no, I mean.
Carry on.
I'm just saying, okay, because, at one point, while Dooku was alive, because, Maul was thought to have perished by the hands of Obi-Wan.
Well, he was cut in half.
But he didn't die.
He didn't die, but anybody would think.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's what he got.
So did Lucas until he decided for some reason to write him back alive.
But then, okay, so he comes back. But then it's okay, but Dooku's in place now as the new apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Maul is upset because in the last episode, that's one of the things he's like, I was cast aside. I think he tried to come back and, was like, no, I got another guy already. So, and I'm actually working on another guy. So it's just
no.
So you're really number 4. It's just like, dang.
Yeah, right.
You're like the 4th Sith Lord now. When you used to be like the number 2.
He wasn't playing.
Yeah, man. Palpatine was stacking them up like dominoes. So my whole thing is I understand where Darth Maul is mentally and I guess emotionally because he feels betrayed by his master. So he's just kind of well, screw it. The best way to get back at you is just take down your whole plan, even though he doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, that's definitely, in my opinion, the whole catalyst behind that. Catalyst is another great novel, by the way, that just incredible. It's all over the place on this now.
But so I'm just really just confused, and I guess I really just have to see it. But maybe after I watch tonight's episode, I can kind of get a better picture. But
see, that's the problem. This is what I hate about this. Is every time well, this is why I don't like to talk about the Clone Wars too much as it's on, because you and I will get into this great discussion about the Clone Wars. Then I go home, and it's completely nullified by the episode that's on, right? We're having all this, really great speculation, and then all of a sudden, it's going to be oh, well, okay, that point's gone, and that point's gone. And so, I mean, it's just one of those things where I kind of wish that, we could actually watch it. Remember when they used to release these things on Thursdays?
Yes.
And then we could do it on Thursday, and then, of course, but then again, we were recording every 2 weeks, so there is that. But yeah, I think that as this unfolds, and again, this brings us right back to how's this whole thing going to end, because you do have to wonder, obviously Maul's captured, whatever happens to him, because we know he gets away eventually because of what happens in Rebels. What is his thinking? And then what happens to him between when this Clone Wars thing ends and then how he was just looking to get everybody.
Right. And it's he turned his attention basically I think this is where we find out his other hatred for Kenobi. Because if you really think about it, okay, we only have the last 2 episodes, tonight and next week's.
Mm-hmm.
The next time we see Maul, it's in Rebels.
Right.
And he's obsessed with Obi-Wan. So what happened between...
Well, and the thing is...
You see what I'm saying?
Spoiler alert. I feel the need to say this because, it does occur to me sometimes that people haven't actually seen some of this stuff. But at the end of... Well, let's see. How do I do this without... At the end of Rebels, basically he alludes to the fact that he wants Obi-Wan to get vengeance for him. So it makes me wonder, because it seems like, okay, you're bent on getting revenge on him, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, good. I'm glad to see this. All right. That is true, because basically this whole thing would be a spoiler discussion to you, Deep Dishy. I mean, it's one of those. Here's the thing. So Maul faces Obi-Wan at the end when Obi-Wan is more the way we see him in Episode 4, and here we thought we were going to get this big epic battle, and all of a sudden Obi-Wan dispatches him like instantly.
Yeah,
there's almost
2
like
seconds.
yeah, like in 2 seconds. It was kind of like that one. Who did Tyson fight? And the thing lasted like 90 seconds.
Everybody.
Well, yeah,
Everybody in the 80s.
All right, that's pretty true. Okay, so they're right, and that's basically what this was like. Okay, so at the end, as Maul was dying, we think for the final time, he basically was like, avenge us or something. And it's one of those things where I always thought, okay, how did he go from this intense hatred to doing this unless he finally was at peace almost? See, there it goes again. What is that?
I think it's the light battery.
Oh, yeah, you might be right. Uh-oh.
Move along.
Yeah. Well, all right. It's probably going to be my light, too. If for some reason my light goes out, because it seems like we can never have one of these streams without something happening, you guys will know why.
This is the way.
Yeah. Well, I got my phone light, right? Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it just makes me wonder, exactly how this is going to happen. Because Maul's whole journey from after we last see him in The Phantom Menace all the way through Clone Wars when we first meet him, because he doesn't really pop in until kind of in the middle of the series, all the way through Rebels. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can go now, and this time we are going to go to one of my favorite segments, and it's something we call Clear Your Mind. That's right. This is where you guys send us questions, we answer them. And, of course, hey, if you guys have questions, like Deepy Dishy here, who's been having a great chat with us this whole time, and all you guys could do it too. Hey, man, we hope we see you again next week as well. Hit us up in the chat section. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit every button that has to do with following us or subscribing to us or whatever, wherever you're watching this. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitch. We're broadcasting this live in 2 places. So right now, we have some questions that people have sent us in. What's the first one?
All right. The first question has been submitted by Jamar Wilson. His question is, do you ever think we will see the backstory on the Fets?
I hope so. I really do, because it's funny that this question comes up, because also in last night's Clone Wars episode, well, actually, I plowed through like 4 or 5 of them. It was when Boba Fett popped up in the Clone Wars, who was actually voiced by Daniel Logan, which I thought was cool. And he was trying to get revenge on Mace, and, Mace is like, oh, yeah, I killed his father, Jango, blah, blah, blah. And it was sort of cool how they did that. But now that we know that the Fets aren't true Mandalorians, and you have all these Mandalorians that have now been popping up in Rebels, and now, of course, we have the series of Mandalorian, I truly hope we do get more of a background. And, I mean, I get it if people think that we don't necessarily need it, because you do sort of know everything you really need to know about Jango.
Mm-hmm.
And, Boba we've been tracing. But I would like to see more of how Boba Fett goes from that little kid that lost his father to the really cool bounty hunter that he is.
Yeah.
Now, in that episode, though, he was with Aura Singh and Bosk, and I thought that was a really cool thing, too. So
yeah, and he kind of came up with the elite of the elite and bounty hunters. And so, of course, he's kind of predisposed to that because, of his dad and whatnot. And, but just furthering those skills as he gets older, though. He would have his dad to help him or to kind of further his training, if you will. So who did it? And then, how did he...
Well, and it's funny because, the fact that he was with Aura Singh and Bosk and all that shows that they probably helped hone him. And it makes sense on why we see him with Bosk and, Empire Strikes Back when it was that whole line of bounty hunters with IG-88 and so on. But I also think it was cool. What was Woody Harrelson's character's name? Decker? Or something like that. How we find out he killed Aura Singh, which I thought was, like, really cool. So you'd imagine Dooku had a hand? Yeah. Probably, absolutely, because he actually mentions Dooku in that episode of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So absolutely he probably had a hand in training him. So, I mean, he had a pretty good pedigree of people around him training him constantly.
And the other thing is, too, because what we kind of glean from The Mandalorian and other things like Rebels and whatnot, is that even like the whole jetpack thing, like that's an art form. Like that's really like part of their training. That's a whole... Because I remember they asked him,
well,
like, have you studied,
wonder,
like,
right.
this? So it's like, where are you getting the knowledge and who's teaching this stuff to
and
you?
so you wonder if maybe some Mandalorians
some rogue Mandalorian.
Because here's the other thing. Where did he get the Mandalorian armor from? Because it's like his Mandalorian armor was sort of pieced together. It wasn't like Jango's.
Yeah, and then the thing is kind of like... the rogue, they kind of have that rogue group of Mandalorians that we've seen. On Clone Wars. So and they kind of worked with Maul. So you kind of wonder.
Yeah, I love the fact that they actually put the little horns in their helmets to kind of be like Maul a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's another good point too. They might have done it. So I do think that it would actually be warranted for us to see some sort of a Fett backstory kind of thing, or at least something that sort of fills in the gaps because. Yeah, there's enough stuff.
Well, if he pops up in Mandalorian like everybody's
hoping
in season 2, then they might actually gotta go. He might get a whole backstory in that, just like in a couple of.
Well, how many? Didn't we say like? Wasn't there something that we saw that said that Mandalorian was supposed to go like 5 seasons or something, or at least that was what their plan was?
Yeah, that's their plan. I think their plan was to go 5 seasons, depending on how successful it is. But it might go.
They can.
They could definitely do it. So.
Well, I mean, if they go, let's just say they go 5 seasons. That's a lot. You can do a lot in 5 seasons. Definitely. And you can actually do like a whole Fett story arc, starting with him getting out of the Sarlacc pit, which I really hope is what, if nothing else, I hope that they just establish that in this canon. They did it in Legends. And the closest we got is in one of the Aftermath trilogy novels. They talk about how somebody actually recovered Boba Fett's armor. So you're like, well, how did they get it? Did the Sarlacc pit like yak it up or something? Or it's
right.
I mean, how did that happen? Or did Boba Fett get out and maybe it was a little damaged, so he sold it or whatever? I mean,
left it somewhere,
or went skinny dipping or something.
Yep.
Somebody like stole his clothes, kind of deal.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So the answer is. Yes, we hope so. Okay. What's the next question?
The next question comes from Dennis Capson, and his question is, why was Obi-Wan upset that Anakin killed Dooku? Aren't they supposed to destroy the Sith?
Well, I mean, here's the thing that I find really funny about that is that, both times that Obi-Wan and Anakin went up against Dooku, Obi-Wan gets like, pretty much incapacitated like almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then Anakin has to shoulder. Obviously, he fared a lot better in 3 than 2.
Definitely.
But I think a lot of it had to be more the way that he did it. Now, who knows what had happened and what transpired because obviously when we see the events of Revenge of the Sith, they're escaping with the Chancellor. They, were still flying half a ship and, all this stuff. And then, of course, they go into the whole Senate thing and everything else. So we don't really know, like, what kind of conversations took place or what transpired or any of that stuff. But I got to think that the only reason why Obi-Wan would say that is maybe he either sensed or heard or whatever that it was done out of anger. And who knows? Maybe he actually regained a little bit of consciousness.
And felt it in the Force.
Felt it in the Force. I mean, there could be a whole lot of reasons.
Well, I think the biggest reason will probably be... and it's actually kind of answered later on in Revenge of the Sith when it came to Mason Palpatine, and that's like, okay, he must stand trial.
Yeah, right.
See,
He
I
never
think
got
at that
any
point,
justice. Yeah.
I think at that point, Anakin learned his lesson. More so in a way like, okay, well, I think it was for his selfish reasons, though, of course.
Well, he didn't really want to kill Dooku, though, remember? I mean, Palpatine was the one that was like, do it. I mean, he was like, no, I shouldn't. You know, I mean, he was really not wanting to do it.
Right, and I think the reason being is because they wanted him to stand trial, and they also wanted to get information because they were trying to, the whole objective was for them to win the war. So, like, if they can get information out of Dooku, if they can kind of, like, hey, you know, we about to bring him to justice and blah, blah, and that's the quote-unquote the Jedi way. Mm-hmm. You know, it's now, you know, the Jedi are never about, like, killing, per se. They're more so about, but they will if they actually have to, if they're not.
Yeah, but it's more of a defensive thing.
It's a defensive thing, not because, like, okay, he's already down, his saber's out of his hand, he's on his knees, like, just put him in restraints or something. But, so I think that's more so the reason why Obi-Wan was probably more so upset, is because, like, that could have shifted the tide of the war. But the fact that you killed him, now that might anger the side that you're fighting even the more, so they want to go harder.
Well, I mean, I like what you were saying, though, is the fact that there was a bunch of information, and I think they actually brought that up in the Clone Wars episode, that there was information that they wanted to get that now they'll never be able to get. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's a legitimate point.
Right.
Even because, remember, at this time, even we're getting close, but at this time, they still did not connect that it was Palpatine who was actually pretty much playing both sides.
Right.
So they're thinking that they could get information from the enemy or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I think Palpatine knew that, and I think that's what he feared, and that's why he wanted him dead for that reason. But the other reason, of course, is that leaves room for Anakin to assume the position of Vader, because he felt like Anakin was close.
I think he knew that, he sensed that it was time. Like, okay, it's time, because, you know, after that, you know, he starts giving him a little bit more information, and then finally he's like, you know, when he figures out that he's a Sith Lord or whatever. That was actually one of my favorite exchanges in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, Ian McDiarmid played the heck out of that role. Like, in
Great.
that moment, just like watching his face and the acting that he was doing. I mean, you could really feel the tension, because it's like Anakin realized, like, oh crap, like, it's been you the whole time. You know, it's just like, but then it's like now you're in this weird moral dilemma now, because it's like, this is a guy that you looked at as a father, and now it's like, well, now I'm supposed to kill you, but.
And DB Dishy is exactly correct. And by the way, they actually allude to this fact in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Is the fact that when the Jedis became generals instead of peacekeepers, and by the way, that was all Palpatine's plan. It wasn't just to create sort of like a fake enemy in order to seize power. The other benefit of it was the fact that it brought the Jedi, and it kind of divided them up, and it gave them, you know, they're having to go against their own code in a lot of senses.
Well, it makes them go against their own code. It puts them in a position where now they're more in front of people more than they would want to be.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to blame and say, look at what the Jedi are doing, and, you know, I can...
They're the one leading them into it. Like, they destroyed our home because they came here. Like,
yeah.
This was a peaceful planet. We weren't even a part of the Republic, but now you brought the war. You've seen it a couple of times where they said, well, you brought the war here. Like, we were fine. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You guys brought this here.
And that was done
responsible.
And it was done all on purpose, too. Because a lot of times you would sit there and think to yourself, like, well, why would Palpatine have, you know, the Separatists go over here? It's because they knew the Jedi would have to go to help them, and then the people would start to resent, and then they would start to resent the Jedi. Like, look, you brought this war to us.
Mm-hmm. And then that's what made his point so strong. It's like, okay, I'm your leader, and then now look what the Jedi have done to me. Like, I'm deformed now. You know.
That's another brilliant move on his part, actually.
Yeah, it's just like, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. But you know what, guys? We're coming toward the end. I mean, hey, if anybody has anything else they want to say, that's totally cool. But yeah, I mean, I think that overall, you know, the Clone Wars is going in a really good direction. I think that this is really a lot better than I actually thought. Now, here we go. So how do we feel about Disney and the sequel movies so far? Do you think if George Lucas was still in charge, they would have been better or worse? Understand some fans are very passionate about that question, so I'm asking this. Yeah, don't worry. This is a safe space to talk about Star Wars. You're right. I mean, sometimes, you say the wrong thing and everybody crawls on you. Well, here's the thing. I mean, yes, we've done, a lot of stuff, and certainly, go back and check out some of the stuff if you want to see, like, really in-depth discussions that we've done about some of the movies. We did a Rise of Skywalker review. We did a Last Jedi review. I don't think we ever did a Force Awakens one, did we?
Yeah.
Did we ever I don't think we retroactively did one.
I don't think so.
We should do one. But so far, and I'll try not to lose it like I usually do. So, we're fans of the sequel trilogy. We think it's really cool, and there's a lot of things that we love about it. The only problem and both of us share the same opinion, so I know I could speak for you safely on this one, is that the only problem is they didn't actually plan. So what they should have done was had the 3 directors in a room and say, okay, let's hash out a story, basically like what they're doing with the High Republic authors.
Mm-hmm.
Let's everybody create a general story. Here's the beginning. Here's the end. Here's the middle. Okay, so JJ, you're doing episode 7. Okay, so by the end of episode 7, this is where you got to go. Now, you can do whatever you want in between, but you got to get from here to here. Okay? Rian Johnson, you're picking it up, so you got to get from here to here. And then at the time, it was Colin Trevorrow. Then it became J.J. Abrams. The problem is that they let each of the directors just kind of do what they wanted. It was almost like a choose-your-own-adventure thing. So J.J. set up this really cool thing. I mean, I thought The Force Awakens was really good. A lot of people do talk about how it was a rehash of 4. But you have to understand the whole rhyme and the whole scheme of things when you're dealing with stories and story beats. The idea was it was almost like bringing back a song in the same style. They wanted to reintroduce the genre. So it was necessary to hit a few of the beats. I mean, I thought it was different enough that, it was cool. The Last Jedi, we both thought we liked it. Mm-hmm. But I remember when we first saw it, we weren't talking after we left the theater. We were
kind of had to process.
Like, yeah, I mean, neither one of us really wanted to have that first, like, yeah, did you like it? I don't know, did you like? I mean, it was one of those things where there was a lot to process, and it was cool. It had some issues, we thought. Most notably, neither one of us liked the Kando bite scene.
Ugh.
And, you still could have had Finn and even Rose go off on some other thing, but there's other things that I thought they could have done, and I know you feel the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Rise of Skywalker, we both loved it. We thought it was a really fun movie. We thought it got back to what Star Wars is all about. But again, there was, first of all, I think both of us wish they had done Duel of the Fates.
Yeah. The way it's been presented, yeah. It sounds,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really think that, just to briefly echo, what he's saying, it's like, yeah, we love the sequel just because it's Star Wars and it's fun again. Yeah, to his point, it wasn't playing well at all. And I think that's really what hurts a franchise like that, is when you really don't. I mean, that's what made the Marvel Universe so successful. It's because they thought about the end and they went all the way back. It's like, okay, how do we get to Endgame? So when you look at it from that context, with shorter films, it's like, okay, how do we get here and how does it make sense? And, how do we push the envelope? You want to push the envelope where it's fresh and new, but it's also familiar. And that's sometimes hard to do. It's almost kind of like building muscle and cutting weight at the same time. You can do it, but it's difficult sometimes.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of what the Star Wars franchise was kind of going through. And of course, everybody's going to hold it up to the gold standard of the original trilogy. And, especially now you don't have the father of it all, with George Lucas not being around, it's kind of like, all right, well, would have been better? Maybe. I mean, just the stories might have been, but there were some things that George Lucas was trying to do that I'm like, I don't like that idea.
Yeah, I don't know. And yeah, exactly.
So-
It does feel like 3 different movies, and they kind of briefly like reference the other ones. It was just disjointed, I think would be the best way to describe them. And it's too bad because, again, you think of what it could have been, and you get just enough with each of these movies to go like, man, if they had really planned this, it could have been phenomenal. Now, that said, because let's talk about the other 2 Disney ones, Solo and Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
Rogue One I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
It was gritty. They wanted to make a darker, more emphasis on the wars than the lore, and I thought they did just a great job on that.
Masterful job. Yeah.
Fantastic job. Solo, okay, we didn't really need a Han Solo origin story. Nobody was really asking for it, but if you had to give it to us, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. It was fun.
I think they did a great selection of picking the characters, especially like Donald Glover playing Lando.
Oh, I was so excited because being a big Community fan as I am, as soon as I found out that he was playing Lando, I'm like, of course.
Yeah, of course.
It has to be him.
Yeah. And then, Alden Ehrenreich did a really good job as playing Han.
And it's funny about that, too, because a lot of people had mixed feelings about it. I did, too. I mean, let's face it. Who's going to be Harrison Ford, right?
Yeah.
But I have to say that at first, it was a little weird, like the first time I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
But then every time I watch that movie, I get more and more into his performance.
Well, and that's my thing. I think it's like, don't try to be Harrison Ford, but you just have to believe that it's Han Solo. And I think that's the thing. It's like you gotta have certain things, as we always say, certain beats that's going to hit. But I think that eventually, you have to kind of make it your own in a way. And I think he did in the context of where the character Han Solo was at that juncture in his life.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and it is a large galaxy, and that's one of the things that I've been trying to say, and I know you and I have talked about this on several of our past shows, is that let's expand the Star Wars universe a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't need to see everybody's origin.
Right.
I don't need to see everybody as a younger version of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily need to see the continuing adventures of Finn, although I wouldn't mind it. But, and I mean, at least he's a relatively new character. But,
sure.
That's why I'm really hopeful about this High Republic thing.
Well, yeah, and I think, the High Republic, I think there's a wealth of things, and that's what I love now that I think there's finally kind of somebody woke them up, and it's like, okay, you know what? You can do subgenres in Star Wars. So like we said earlier, Cassian Andor is a spy, thing. Mandalorian is a Western. You can do.
I'm waiting for the horror one.
Yeah, and I know you
give me a Star Wars horror film, man. I will eat that up.
And I'm just like, okay, well, I wonder what the Kenobi thing is going to be like.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I wonder what tone it's going to be. Like kind of what genre? Romantic comedy.
Yep.
Sleepless in Tatooine. Or
He's
something,
got a little sand babe,
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But
did you see this?
What is the High Republic supposed to be? I saw one ad for it a while ago and couldn't really tell. Is it books or comics? So the High Republic pretty much takes place 400 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. It's pretty much when the Jedi are in their prime, and the Sith really aren't around, but there are dark side Force users prevalent. And then they have other things that they're trying to do. And I think this is the beginning of the Jedi Council, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is kind of like...
Yeah, I think you're right.
Where they start to kind of form that whole thing. So kind of think of the High Republic era, if you're a Game of Thrones fan. Kind of, I'm assuming it's kind of going to have that kind of...
Yeah, it's weird because that's what we always thought
or
that
Lord of
the
Rings.
Old Republic would be, though. But I think you're right, actually. I think it's going to be kind of a Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. Yes, it is going to be comics and books.
Yes.
As far as I know, they may have talked about some TV series or something like that, but it's pretty much what they did was, and again, this is what they should have done with the sequel trilogy. They got the authors, Claudia Gray, others. Claudia Gray is actually probably my favorite current Star Wars author, but they got a bunch of authors and I think some comic book guys too, right?
Possibly, but I think it's more so the
authors.
The authors.
So they they did like this retreat. They went on a retreat with the Star Wars story group, and they essentially just came up with a story, characters, all kinds of stuff. And then they're going to release it, and it's going to be like cross-platform, right? So the story might start in a comic and continue in a novel, and then pick up again in another comic,
or a game or something.
Or a game or something. Yeah. So it's going to go across platforms. The only thing that they were a little bit ambiguous about was television and movies.
But I think they probably will do a movie because, like I said, there's been big speculation about that Kevin Feige is supposed to be.
Well, there's that, and
then
they got some.
And then Ryan Johnson is also still has his trilogy out. So I mean, and of course everybody's like hates Ryan Johnson right now as far as what he's done with Star Wars. But once again, I feel like Ryan Johnson would have done better if he would have had fresh new characters that no one knows.
Sure, like we're big fans of Knives Out.
Yeah,
I mean that movie was incredible.
Exactly, and so I think you took something like brand new characters that no one knows that he can kind of mold and create, and then now there's no expectations. Now there's no Luke Skywalker that you kind of put on this pedestal, and this is what you expect and want from him. There's none of that.
After the first time you basically see him after 30 years, it's
right.
kind of like, there are reasons why people had issues with what he did with The Last Jedi. But again, if he has his own trilogy that he could start fresh, I think it would be kind of cool. But we'll have to see, because supposedly there is a movie that's coming out in 2022. Mm-hmm. 2 years. Yeah. We've heard nothing.
And we don't know, especially now with the whole coronavirus situation. It might be pushed back even further. But
like, what was our other show? Like how the coronavirus is affecting production. This is like back when it first started too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't know.
Yep.
I mean, the funny thing about Star Wars is that, and we always said this. In fact, I think it's on our Facebook page. Oh, by the way, I should mention this too. We do on Facebook have our own group, the head-to-head of Star Wars community. So, find that, join that list. So that way, you guys can keep track of what's going on there. We got a lot of people on there. I'm trying to get them, to also watch the show. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Right. See, if they had done that with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, that's what we said.
That's what we had been saying, is that if they actually thought it out, got the story group involved, plan, okay, you're going to take this and you're going to take that and you're going to take that, we might have actually had a cohesive trilogy. Mm-hmm. That would have been nice. And I think that that's part of the problem, and why I think fans are so angry is the fact that it's like, look, what could have been if you guys had just not mishandled it? And don't forget, there's also, this could be the nail in Kathleen Kennedy's coffin, because apparently, I don't know if you heard this or not, but you know how I was telling you about she was trying to do this all-female Star Wars, I don't know if it's a show. I think it's a show.
I think, it's a TV show.
Yeah. So she was trying to do this whole Disney Plus series with this all-female cast. Well, apparently, she was doing this as kind of a political move. So Bob Iger, they knew nothing about this. She just announced this. Right? Then she's moving forward with it. Disney had no idea.
Kathleen.
So there's been some fallout, and they wonder if she did this as some sort of a weird political move. To what end, I don't know.
I find her lack of communication disturbing.
Well, it just shows you how messed up everything is.
Yeah. Well, that's why everybody says she's destroying Star Wars right now.
Well, yeah. Hey, I'm still thinking of that picture about...
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a lot of different things that I think that they're doing that they're just... It's almost like they're digging a bigger hole.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, guys, you have the beginnings of some good ideas.
All right.
If you just... put on the brakes. I mean, I thought that when they first announced that they were going to do, like, okay, we're going to put the brakes on movies and all that, and we're going to regroup and figure stuff out, I was actually behind that decision.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because they mishandled the sequel trilogy, and unfortunately, you only get one shot at it.
Yep.
In spite of the fact that you and I had said that whole, hey, wouldn't it be cool if they made, like, an animated version of Duel of the Fates, but it's like, well, now you're going to have, like, I mean, look, everybody was really confused after Force Awakens when Rogue One came out. They're like, well, wait, is this episode 8? Oh, wait, it's a well, where does this take place? Wait, it's before 4, but it's after 7. I mean,
Yeah.
people just couldn't. Could you imagine if you put out an alternate episode 9? People would be like, well, wait a minute.
Well, see, then that alternate episode 9 might negate everything that happened in Force Awakens or Last Jedi.
Well, probably not.
Well,
because
Count
Trevorrow was.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Because if you remember the script to that, it actually perfectly. See, I think that people would. That's the movie that I think that if that had come out in its form, people would have looked back and said, you know what? Now The Last Jedi makes sense to me. Yeah, see, I agree too. I think it would be cool. You know, I mean, the whole SJW thing, yeah, if that's what it's about, then that would suck. But because, again, it's like, come on, guys. You could do it. But, yeah, I think the same thing, that if they did an all-female, Star Wars thing, that could be a different thing. Because I thought, as I think you said you did too, that when the hero of this trilogy was actually a female, I thought, well, that's kind of a cool spin. That's something that we hadn't seen before, and there's a lot of interesting things that you could do with that.
True.
Which they did. I actually thought that one of the things that was done right in the sequel trilogy, for the most part, Doug's comments are still accurate. I think they did overpower Rey a little bit. But,
White Elephant says, I think it would end with Ahsoka trying to go into exile.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, it would be interesting though, because that's how season 5 ended.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't really see any other way around it, because if you think about it, when she came out of nowhere, because if I remember correctly, in Rebels, didn't she reveal herself as Fulcrum? I think she did.
Yeah.
Because I remember one of the things that people had a problem with when she used that term within the last couple episodes of Season 7, they're like, well, wait a second, because what was his name? Callus?
Agent Callus, yep.
Yeah. It was one of those things that Anakin knew that term. So there was something up. I don't remember the exact details, but there was something up with the canon that people would kind of freak out a little bit. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think that she's definitely going to go into exile. Now, what she does, I don't know. I mean, do you think that she's going to try to start her own? Because remember, we had said that Mon Mothma and Bail Organa were really the architects of the rebellion, as we know. But didn't Ahsoka actually, you guys might be able to help me with this too, didn't Ahsoka actually create like some sort of a cell?
Well, I think she kind of had her own, like, almost like little rebel.
Yeah, that's
group,
what I thought too.
I think what would be cool is if she kind of like went and tried to protect like other young Force users.
Yeah, that would be cool. Kind of like
a guardian almost. Like, okay, like
sort of rescuing people from
the purge.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
White Elephant says, if these SJWs want true equality, we should really have a main female Sith Lord.
I'd be down with that.
Absolutely. I don't know if they want to do that because they don't want women to look bad, even though we've had Ventress and Phasma.
And I'll tell you something. Ventress is still one of my favorite characters,
love
man.
Ventress, man.
She was amazing. And
did
you guys,
Ventress.
I don't know, did you guys read Dark Disciple? That book was so cool. You still haven't read it yet, have you?
No, but I'm still loving her in Dooku though, so it's still.
Oh yeah, so how far are you on the Dooku one?
I'm getting there. So, but I mean, my thing is like Ventress.
Notice how he just kind of.
Well, because I'm trying to stay with the question, because I don't want to veer off. The whole
Yeah,
thing
like
is,
we haven't done that before.
Exactly. But that's what So the thing is with like, yeah, if you have a female Sith Lord, and I think that was a cool thing that we thought we were going to see with Rey. Remember, because when we saw that Dark Rey, yeah, like we were just like, whoa, because that was going to be
missing.
a whole.
Right, that's what's missing. I honestly think that's one thing we need to see.
Yeah.
Give me a female Sith Lord.
Because, well, no, Mara J wasn't.
No, she was like the Emperor's
was
hand. She
but
was
she
kind of
was
like an assassin.
She was another Asajj Ventress, basically, but she wasn't truly a Sith Lord.
Yeah, because that's true. Because Asajj is.
Because she never got to. She never got to the rank of Sith because she couldn't because of Dooku.
God, my light's gone.
Yep.
So yeah, you want a female Sith Lord? I mean, you see characters like the Nine Sisters. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. I mean, these.
And she was like the cooler one, other than Inquisitors too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. 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 I mean, these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about, and this is the kind of stuff that you really want to see happen in the Star Wars universe instead of rehashes of the same thing over and over again. And again, I mean, I'm not necessarily, you and I think both are kind of the same in that sense, is that we understand the people that really are just like beside themselves and like almost toxic in their passion.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think that they're overlooking a lot of really cool things in Star Wars because they're so busy nitpicking it.
True.
But, I mean, a female Sith Lord is something that I think has got to happen.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. What else do you think? Like, if you had to pick something, you guys hop in on this too. Female Sith Lord, we got that. The all-female Star Wars hero thing, almost like a Charlie's Angels of Star Wars. That's kind of cool.
It's like Wonder Woman. It's like
the
Amazonians.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So what other things do you think we need to see in Star Wars? Like I've said, let's go more into the genre thing. Let's do a Star Wars horror film. But if we're going along the lines of what,
Well, I think, like I said, I think we're doing... I've always said I wanted to kind of see the origins of the Force. I've always wanted to see something like that where you kind of like...
Or maybe like the first Jedi was ever tapped into it?
Yeah, like the first time like the Force kind of like popped up or something and people just kind of like, okay, what is this? And there's like some old shaman man or something like that that's kind of like explains like, oh, you have this gift, and then it kind of starts to see the evolution, and then it's like, well, what is it? It's like, what does it feel like? It feels like a force, something like that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now you're exploring.
Kind of like, I don't know, I thought I had indigestion or something, but, it turned out I have this power. So, yeah, DB Dishy's like, in my perfect world, issues like gender and representation level of the characters wouldn't matter. It would just be about telling a good Star Wars story. Absolutely. And, I mean, I think that that's one of the things that he and I have been trying to say the whole time. Let's just have a good story. Quit trying to balance things out and, let's represent this group or that group or whatever it is.
It's like, okay, we don't need a Latino and just to...
Yeah, just to shoehorn, something in there. You don't have to solve the world's problems in a movie.
Right.
White Elephant says, if I could create a Star Wars story, I would want the villain to take blood with that high midichlorian and put it into a clone army and heroes fight the Force-sensitive army instead of another Death Star.
Yeah, I could see that. That would almost be
that's more. See, to me, that's more like a High Republic era type thing.
That could be, or it could be what they could have done with the Sith troopers.
Yeah, or I would love to see like the Sith Wars or something like that. Like when they actually battled, like the Old Republic, when they battled the Sith, and actually like, okay, like just kind of show like those origins.
You know how you solve that? You do a Knights of the Old Republic movie.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
like based on that first game.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like if they did,
but not just
like
because Disney has this irritating habit. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that because some of the stuff is kind of outlandish in the old Legends. But if they took something like the Knights of the Old Republic game, don't just base things and cherry pick here and there. Actually, just give us that storyline because it was good.
Yeah. White Elephant says, I don't like midichlorians, but since they're in the universe, they might as well be put to good use. I hear you, man.
Yeah, you know what? That was George Lucas trying to do the whole sci-fi thing, and everybody forgets that Star Wars is actually a fantasy. It's more like sci-fi fantasy, really, and I don't know what the deal was.
Well, I mean, I think it's just everybody's trying to have an explanation for something.
Well, and DB Dishy's like, that's Disney, though. They're passive, progressive, and they try very hard to show that in every single scrap of anything they put out, sometimes more subtle than not. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of the things that, let's face it, even though it seems like Disney does own everything, it seems like they're always trying to show like, hey, we're sensitive to, to everything.
All the different
viewpoints or whatever. It's like, let's try to put it all in the movie. And then, of course, you have, like White Elephant pointed out, Lucas kind of went a little bit off the rails with the midi-chlorian thing. See, that's why, if you just go back to A New Hope, I really like the explanation that that Obi-Wan had. Or Yoda. The Force surrounds us, it binds us. But, it was a very simple, clean explanation.
Well, yeah, and I think, one of the things, though, is it's weird because it's like, one, you're trying to talk about midi-chlorian count, but then you're talking about, like, all right, well, you have this, the Force chooses who it wants to choose. So it's just like, well, which is it? Because it's like, is it my blood count or is it this mysterious spirit? Like, what you can't have both. And that's what I'm saying. I think it's one of those situations where, like, I feel like, okay, you're just, it's almost like somebody's just born with an anomaly or something like that, or somebody who's just like no one has, like how Albert Einstein is just, he's just brilliant. It's like a
deformity. Yeah, exactly.
He's just brilliant. That's just, some people are just born brilliant, and that's it. Like, Stephen Hawking was born brilliant. That's just it.
DB Dish is pointing out, if you saw Lucas's ideas for episode 7, 8, and 9 with these like little nanobot like creatures,
it's
or
like
something.
Now he's trying to do into Iron Man technology or something.
Yeah,
like
man.
That.
I mean, that was some like out there stuff. Let me tell you. I mean, and that's at first you're kind of like, man, I really wish that Lucas could come back and do Star Wars, and then you read that and you're like, you know what? That's cool. Just
retired. Yep. Sit back, enjoy your billions.
But again, it was like, and we brought this up a few times, the movie Red Tails.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of proves that Lucas could still put out a really good movie.
Well, that was based upon real life.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can.
I mean, I know he still can.
Still had to craft a story, man. It wasn't like it was just.
Well, I mean, it was really like life events. It's based on the Tuskegee Airmen, but
dude, that fan is louder today.
But like Indiana Jones, for example. Now, see that?
There you go. Perfect.
Hey.
Now, granted, Spielberg, I'm sure, had a lot of input in that, and Spielberg did admittedly have a lot of input into the prequels.
I wish he would have did Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, that would have been cool. Really, they could have just had Spielberg do that. Here's the thing.
Or at least write it all. Or something, or maybe have, Lucas like, okay, here's the story we're thinking of. And I think that that's what happened. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is what happened, actually, is that Lucas came in and actually helped JJ craft a few things with Rise of Skywalker, which is probably why we liked it. Mm-hmm.
Even though there's people like John Campea and people like that who firmly did not like it at all.
Yeah.
And, hey, look. I understand. And this is the thing that, both Daryl and I have always been talking about. This is, number one, this is a safe space. We can talk about whatever.
It's the embassy, as we call it.
Whatever you want to talk about in Star Wars, we respect. We're not going to sit there and, like, bash you guys or anything like that for any kind of viewpoint like a lot of people do. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so let's see. So on an interview somewhere, Lucas said he was making his own film, so he doesn't plan on releasing since he sold Star Wars. Yeah, so would I. Because, honestly, okay, there's some weird stuff. Like, I don't know if you guys ever saw that whole THX 1138, but it was a little odd. It was a little out there.
White Elephant says, I also want to see a multi-universe in Star Wars. We could have a storyline with the original concept like Starkiller and Stormtroopers with lightsabers and everything based on the Ralph McQuire
Yeah, the
concept art.
Macquarie, concept art. Yeah, exactly. And there really is no reason why we couldn't have stuff like that. I mean, honestly, because if you really stop and think about it, Star Wars, even more so than Marvel, or DC for that matter, is really ripe to have an incredible multiverse type of a situation. I mean, they really are, because there's just so many things,
Yeah. I think, and like I said, even with The Last Jedi, like, I felt it was a cool scene with when Kylo and Rey kind of teamed up and went against the Praetorian Guards. But see, I would have rather seen, like, the Knights of Ren try to attack Rey.
Yeah,
like,
well, I mean...
You know what I'm saying? Just in that
But see, this is kind of like a twofold kind of a thing, because what you're talking about is one thing. Then man, I mean, we've gone to town on this thing before. Is like there's so many things within the context of the story they were telling that they could have done and arguably should have done that would have made it more compelling. But then, like what these guys on our chat here are talking about is that, there's so many other things that you could do. And yes, thank you.
The world between worlds.
Yes.
White elephants watch rebels.
Yes, and this is basically one of the concepts that Daryl and I have talked about forever. In fact, didn't we say in our Rise of Skywalker speculation that we thought that they were going to introduce that?
The world between worlds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe have somebody pop up because, and this is another example of something that they do in Star Wars all the time. They're always like, they'll, introduce some really cool concept and then you don't hear about it ever again.
See, that's why I love the whole concept they had between the son and the daughter, so the dark side
Mordor,
was,
I think it was.
Yeah, and then the father was the balance in between, and then the Bendu. I love that stuff. That stuff was dope. And I think if you put stuff like that, I think they could introduce stuff like the Great Jedi, which I would have loved to see Ahsoka kind of take that charge. I think that would have been, because I think it would have been cool to actually have 3 different sections. You have Jedi, Great Jedi, Sith. And then that way it's all right, sometimes you're always going to have that war between the Sith and Jedi, but then the Greys kind of all right, they kind of try to keep the balance between the two of them. Sometimes they may have to go against the Jedi because the Jedi just are become arrogant and they he's no, you really need to chill out. But then the Sith are kind of no, I'm craving this power and I want to rule, and it's all right, we need to help the Jedi kind of simmer you down a bit. So, and I would love to kind of see that. That would be a cool concept.
Well, and one of the things that White Elephant brings up that I totally agree with about the whole MCU concept. A lot of times when people are thinking of the MCU and tying the stories together, they think of kind of the main guys plus the Avengers, right? But here's the thing: if you look at Ant-Man and Wasp or Guardians of the Galaxy and all this other stuff, it all ties in. They actually tie everything in neatly, and Star Wars could totally do that.
Yeah.
So what's we got? White Elephant. I feel like a lot of the Disney era haters hate so much because they actually don't give it an honest chance. Totally agree. They don't realize that there is so much possibility that, oh man, what does the rest of it say?
Hasn't been tapped yet, and it's cool. Still,
yeah.
And still cool.
Yeah.
And then Deep Dish, he says, MCU is making a show called What If? That's basically just alternate realities told in single episodes, changing to different topics each episode. That show isn't out yet. But I
really like that idea. Both of us, I got this one. But I really like that idea, and I'd really like to see something like that for Star Wars. And once again, here's an example. There was a book. I don't know if you guys remember it or saw it or whatever, but it's called From a Certain Point of View, kind of like our main topic, right? And it basically is kind of like that. Well, in a way, what it did was it would tell different Star Wars stories
from
from a different point of view, like from somebody else or whatever.
Yeah. So Star Wars is originally told from the droid's perspective.
Right.
But now you might see it from, Chewbacca's perspective.
Or like some other character, and it's kind of like, okay, we lead the scene. Well, what about this guy? What do they do? Another book that kind of does that is Lost Stars, remember, by Claudia Gray. So I mean, it's just one of those things that they could just do so much. Yeah, I just don't like the Disney shine that is put over everything they put out. And you know what? I agree. There's so many things that they could do, that they could talk about, that they could do, but I think that they're afraid to go away from this very middle of the road, at least right now in the beginning. What do we got here?
In the MCU, they got the main normal timeline, but in Endgame, they introduced that there's other timelines which they are getting Disney Plus shows like Loki.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly. And then, of course, you had, what was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on? Netflix or something?
No, it's.
I mean, it's on Disney Plus now, but.
Oh, you mean like current? You talking about when it was originally released?
Yeah, when it was originally released.
It was on TV. It was actually.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was canceled or whatever. Tag and Bink comic series. Yes, those were the two. Oh man, help me out. They were the two guys. Were they the two stormtroopers that were talking about? Hey, did you see the new T-16 Hopper or whatever? Solo sequel.
Yes.
We
sequel.
were talking about that earlier, actually. Yeah. Yep. I mean, especially when, we were just talking about the brilliance of them setting up Crimson Dawn
with Maul
and all this stuff, and Kira, and they could have really done some stuff, and I would love to see some Han Solo and Lando Calrissian adventures.
Exactly. Yep.
Some stuff, or maybe they're on like kind of the same thing and they're getting in each other's way or something like that. I mean, that would have been phenomenal. And in fact, I'm going to go as far as to say that a Solo sequel would have surpassed the original as far as quality and story-wise goes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. You missed. It was a pretty good discussion, but I mean, it was, hey, it's something we're always happy to revisit because I can't get enough talking about Star Wars. And yes, a Disney Plus show. That is exactly what we were thinking too. In fact, on another show that we did, was it when we reviewed Solo? Do you remember?
What's the question?
Well, I mean, when we were talking about maybe doing a Solo sequel on a Disney Plus show, or was that its own thing?
Oh, no,
I don't remember.
I think that was when we reviewed Solo.
I thought so too. That we're kind of like, okay, chances are because of the box office disappointment, we're not going to get an actual Solo 2.
But then you had this whole push on like social media that they wanted it because the problem with Solo, it wasn't the fact that the movie was bad. It was just no marketing for it. It's like that they just did a very, very poor job marketing that movie.
Yeah,
so it's like, not Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi comes out, and then you just spit Solo out like right on top of it, basically, without any.
Well, and then what did they do? They gave us they finally gave us a trailer for it, like what, 2 weeks before the thing opened or something. It's like, who was in charge of that?
And so you got basically almost like 2 Star Wars movies out at the same time, and people are trying to figure out, okay, well, where does this fit in? I'm confused.
Right, because there was absolutely no marketing for it.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you had the whole debacle where they fire Lord and Miller like when they're 80% through the movie. I mean,
so that everybody was freaking out because everybody thought it was going to be terrible. So everybody's just kind of like, okay. And especially coming off The Last Jedi, which was panned by everybody. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, okay, everybody was kind of freaked out. Like, no, I don't want to go see nothing until at least The Rise of Skywalker comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, White Elephant, you're absolutely correct. If they do create a Solo sequel, they shouldn't do...
they shouldn't show Han
around Darth Maul, right? When he uses the Force because he didn't believe in it. Yeah, see, and this goes back to something. I don't know if you were watching us before, like when you actually came in, but we addressed earlier in the show, I think, where there's certain things that they're doing by overlapping all these timelines that they're going to start painting themselves into a corner. Because, like you brought up, you can't see, Han can't see Darth Maul using the Force because he doesn't believe in it yet. Mm-hmm. So there's all these things that the story group now is going to have to be careful about with the continuity, because you can't have this character meet this one or anything like that, because that's one of the things that I worry about with the Obi-Wan series.
Well, here's my question though. When Obi-Wan is explaining the Force never mind. Answer my own question. Let's move on.
Well, glad we can help. Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things that I think the more that they stick around this little window of time, and they seem to be hammering pretty much, for the most part, you're seeing in between 3 and 4, 4 and 5, and 5 and 6. Not even so much between 5 and 6, really, but 3 and 4 and 4 and 5. Those are the ones that are getting like almost all the canon treatment from the comics and novels or whatnot. Yes, you're starting to see some stuff post Return of the Jedi now, but that's still a fairly new thing. Mm-hmm. The danger between, say, 3 and 6 is that you're going to start having to be more and more careful about continuity. And that's my biggest, I think, concern about this whole thing.
White Elephant says, I also want to see a follow-up with Rey. It should be in the book, though, or a comic.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let me get back to Rey for a second, and I'll get your thoughts on this as well, since, you're my co-host and in the same room with me and all. Which is nice, because you guys, like I said, if you saw us over the last couple of weeks, actually, I don't think we had any viewers a couple of weeks ago or whatever, which is a good thing, because, it was kind of a disaster. But now that you're in the same room with Rey, now, overall, I kind of like what they did with Rey. I do think they painted her in a little bit of a corner, too, because they made her a little bit too powerful. Now, I know that we had the whole Palpatine thing to explain that. I get that. And I accept that. But here's my problem with it. Okay, she just suddenly knows how to use all this stuff. Like, okay, she's like using the Force to influence a stormtrooper's mind. Yes, she failed at it at first, but, it's just one of those things. DB Dishy says, I feel so awful for Daisy. Really, though, she gets mountains of hate for no other reasons that she played Rey. Yes, absolutely. And she did a great job playing Rey. And even though I felt that there was a few problems with Rey being a little overpowered, I'm actually very curious to see the further adventures of Rey. And in fact, I think that she's the one, if you got to give me a sequel to The Rise of Skywalker, she's the character I'm probably the most interested in.
Of course. You would have to almost follow her by default anyway. But I think, see, the difference is, like, when you look at A New Hope, okay, you really didn't know too much about Jedi and the Force and stuff. The only person you really had running around was Vader, and he only popped up seldomly.
Yeah.
But, like, now post Return of the Jedi, you still have remnants of that war. Like, you go to Jakku and you got like a whole Star Destroyer planet in the middle of the sand. So those stories and that big war are still kind of fresh in people's minds, where you're hearing, the hero Luke Skywalker was a Jedi Knight, and, blah, 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 blah. He helped bring down the Empire, and, he's like this big celebrated hero because you still have artifacts that you can clearly see that's around you. But so I think Rey being powerful, it's kind of like, all right, you start hearing stories and lore and things like that. So you can kind of understand, like, why she kind of knows about some of these things, just because
I
some
can
things
see
are kind of
know
talked
about them, but just having the level, like I said, like I could see all the stuff that she did in The Rise of Skywalker, I can pretty much hang with.
Mm-hmm.
It's really more The Force Awakens where I have a little bit of problems. And I'm not even talking about, because again, when Doug brought up the whole pilot thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he and I both agreed that we can hang with the lightsaber thing because she can fight with a staff. Obviously, she's good with melee combat, but, like, she was doing all this stuff with the Millennium Falcon. It's like, how do you know how to do this? I mean, where did you learn to become a great pilot like that? So,
but then again, you guys have to ask the same thing about Luke, though.
Yeah, but Luke didn't really know, though. It wasn't like he just, some of the stuff that he was instinctively doing, it wasn't really that big of a deal. White Elephant also said, I would love to see what happens to, the OG trio after Return of the Jedi. Me too. In fact, I kind of wish that they had made these movies
sooner.
A lot sooner. I feel like in The Last Jedi, they could have made Luke's point of view more sensible. I can hang with that, definitely. I mean, I did like the cynicism. I thought that was actually it was a brave move, but I thought it was a good move because the Jedi did make a lot of mistakes. And, yes, we all wanted to see Luke ignite the green, as it were, and, come out swinging and be the hero. But I thought that it was a really interesting and good choice. However, I think that, yes, he should have been more disappointed rather than a hater of it. It was kind of like, I think they did go a little bit overboard. Do you agree with that?
as far as him being disappointed in what, like Ben going to the dark side, or
well,
him?
no, I mean the fact that the Jedi, rather than like hating the Jedi, hating the Force and all that, just been more disappointed. Not like, oh, they were, and it's true, like, because Ben was a father to him and made the Jedi sound amazing. Although you could take that as to maybe that's why he had such a. It was almost like he was so disappointed that he became despondent. I think that that's maybe what happened in The Last Jedi.
Well, I just think that, and that's, but see, I think, no, I like the fact that he was that way.
When they didn't fulfill his imagination, if that makes any sense. Yeah, it was almost like they were let down by the heroes, like he built them up, kind of like how Anakin did. Remember, oh, nobody can kill a Jedi and all this stuff. And
yeah, I mean,
then you found out they were all too human, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but see, and that's my thing, though. I think that's what, I think with anything, like, when you're a kid, you look at police officers and you're like, oh, there are heroes, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people in law enforcement who are doing an exceptional and incredible job.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some who don't. We see it on the news all the time. We see people who, we elect to sit in office and fight on our behalf, and then they fail us, or a judge who fails the justice system. There's tons of failures, and I think even the best of the best, like people that we've talked to, they're flawed. And I think that's what makes them different. And I think that's what makes it cool, is the fact that, like, I get like, okay, be disappointed, but it's just like, you gotta, listening to him, it's kind of like he believed his own hype. He was like, oh, because I'm Luke Skywalker Jedi, because just everybody puts you on this pedestal. I get it, right, and
he kind of like believed it. And White Elephant's kind of like, I like what they did, but they should have explained it that way. And I think that that's really more what I'm getting at too, is the fact that, because both of us actually, that was one of the things that we said pretty much immediately after the movie was, I could see where a lot of people were disappointed, but it was really a brave thing to do and something that really made sense when you think of the reality. This actually was a more realistic path than him being the golden boy Jedi.
But see, and like, Deep Dish, he said, I think it went against the Jedi, went against the character of Luke in general. His entire arc was about hope and overcoming darkness by finding the light, and in The Last Jedi, he just threw that all away. But see, the thing is, though, it's like,
well, he also said, but I could also get the idea of Luke losing his way.
Yeah, and that's what happens to all of us at sometimes. Like, a lot of people, no different than, okay, case in point. So I'm new to the education world as far as being an official teacher. Mm-hmm. I've been in education for a long time with you, but now I'm in the role of official teacher. But you and I have often talked about, these new teachers coming out fresh out of college. They're coming in, they're ready to set the world on fire. They're going to change the classroom. I'm going to come in and reach these young minds. And that's because they haven't had the experience yet to understand. Not that you don't want to. Yes, that's the ultimate goal. But realistically, here's what it is. And that's why I love Yoda's whole message to Luke, because Luke still needed training. See, when you look at Luke Skywalker, though, and it's kind of unfair for him, because you got to think about it. Like, okay, the moment he realizes he has the Force and who he is, okay, one, the whole day didn't go by and his whole mentor dies right in front of him. Then he finds out that the guy who killed him was his former pupil that he hates. Then in the second movie, he finds out that same pupil happens to be his dad. And then the guy who's like, okay, who's supposedly picked up his training to allow him to go confront his father, whom he's never seen before. Now, okay, in Return of the Jedi, now he's like, all right, well, you got to go kill your dad now. And he's just like, well, I can't kill my own father. So then now Yoda dies. I mean, guess they can still commune with him, but it's like, okay.
Well, now there's a couple points that White Elephant makes that, this is a good time to address it. Yes, he should have at least treasured Anakin's lightsaber since it was a gift from Ben. I can understand that, but I think part of it was his whole just despondency. I think that was more of an emotional reaction because if you remember, like you pointed out, now after Yoda comes back and sets him straight, it's almost like Luke just needed a course correction. Like, he started to get a little off track, and he just got further and further off track.
Well, that's because, like I said, he didn't have the experience that a Yoda or even Obi-Wan had. You know, Obi-Wan was just in exile because he was just waiting. He was biding time until Luke got old enough. But then he was like, okay, well, he got in a situation where he realized.
Well, and I think that this is why this is why we need, I think, more. We need more stories between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens for Luke.
Sure.
To really see where, because if you think about it, and to these guys' point, you know, I mean, let me just get this one up here really quick. Come on. There we go. They explain Luke better in The Rise of Skywalker, which, yeah, I mean, I think, but again, this is after the course correction a little bit. But yeah, I would agree with that if you take some of Leia's comments, Rey's comments, and things like that, you get a little bit of better feel of what Luke was thinking, going through. They show some of the challenges of being a Jedi, and that was handled a little bit better in The Rise of Skywalker. But also,
you think so?
Yeah, I do, because
I thought they handled it better than The Last Jedi, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, it just depends on how you're, like, how are you? What do you mean?
Well, because it's like, okay, when Rey's asking those pertinent questions, so she's like, okay, you know, did you try to, you know, kill? So when he explained the night that he almost tried to kill Ben, and like everything that was going through his head, he was just like, okay, yeah, like these are the thoughts that went through, because it's like, okay, I don't want to create another Vader. I don't want, like, you understand. Because he knows where he comes from. He knows the bloodline. He knows.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, and this is what you got to look at, is the fact that, and I agree, by the way, it's just that in The Rise of Skywalker, you get Leia's comments about the whole situation and some of her challenges and what she was feeling. You get Rey, and now she's, not only does she have the texts and she has all this other stuff, but she's kind of putting a lot of Luke's comments into perspective. Because when you see the Leia-Rey dynamic, it's an interesting take. First of all, let me just say this, because we were talking about female characters being of interest in Star Wars, right? If you really start, you know what, and this, I'm embarrassed to say this is only just now occurring to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, technically there were, but not as prominent. The first prominent female Jedi to female apprentice was the Leia-Rey thing. Yes, you did have Shakti and
Barasafi.
Yeah, but yeah, you know, they didn't focus on that as much. Yeah, you didn't really see it a lot. This is the first time that you really kind of dig into that a little bit more, and I think that that's a really interesting dynamic. But when you get all that, and then of course when Luke comes back and catches a lightsaber and says, "Hey, listen, this is where I went wrong. You can't do this." I think that is where it comes full circle. And that's the only reason, too, why I say that, because you actually see the full effect, right? DB Dishy always says, yes, absolutely, I'd love to see Luke in his prime, running his new order and searching for Sith in the galaxy. Yeah. I think you need to see a little bit more stories leading up to that fall, because you can't fault the fans, really. Because, you know, it's kind of like the last we see Luke, he's this really powerful Jedi. It's like, no, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. He's all, you know. And then the next time you see him, he's throwing away this cherished lightsaber. He's, you know, I mean, it just, I think if they had a little bit more explanation.
Well, yeah, I think.
Maybe done something in The Force Awakens or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that, you know, if they would have, I could understand that. I could see it was like, okay, well, you know, Luke decided to hide, or because he lost Ben to the dark side, and he feels guilty and responsible, and he's depressed, but we're just trying to find him.
Yeah.
Okay, I can understand that, because then that would explain why he's not there. So then when you see him on Octo, you know, it's like, okay, you already kind of are privy to his state of mind. I can understand that. But, I think that was just a great moment, because it's like, you know, when you see this whole when Force Awakens ends and she, extends her hand with the lightsaber and. It's like that great moment. Everybody's just like, oh, and then it's like, oh, it's
Yeah, I
Luke.
know.
He's back. And then like the next movie,
I'll
he
never
takes it
forget
and chucks
that.
it and just like walks
That
off.
was like the last thing I expected.
The last thing that we expected, but it was hilarious because like Rey's expression, she was just like, okay, like what did I do? And I think that was just kind of like.
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's kind of cool too, because remember, she actually went there to get Luke's help. Not only is she not getting Luke's help, but it's like, well, who's this guy? Now I got to try to convince him.
He's not who I thought he was. And then but it also kind of says something too about Luke, how powerful he is. It's like, I don't even need this.
Yeah.
One, he's probably like, I already have my own, first and foremost. And then, probably some bad feelings.
Oh, man, this again?
He's probably, he doesn't want to lose another hand, so he's probably got rid of that quickly.
Well, and the other thing you got to look at, too, is like, oh, yeah, who gave me this Ben's certain point of view Kenobi? Oh, screw that. It's like,
exactly.
He wasn't exactly, if everybody remembers, he wasn't exactly happy with Ben in Return of the Jedi. Like, hey, man.
Why didn't you tell me?
Yeah, why didn't you tell me? Oh, this is good. So White Elephant is kind of like, not to go off the rails, but I got to know what happens to Thrawn. There's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Thrawn's another big question mark.
Yep.
Right? Now, this is going into Rebels a little bit, but yeah, it's kind of like, okay, now in Legends, of course, and it's cool, man. You could go off the rail. Look, this is kind of like that general discussion.
It's a free-for-all
Yeah, free-for-all at this point. I mean, like our agenda is
free
done.
swim at the pool, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and because I mean, I'm not even going to attempt to try to revise the show notes for this episode. It's kind of like, okay, if you look at what we talk about, and then you look at the time code, and then you see how long this thing is going, you just have to buckle up, okay? So what we got from DB Dish here?
He says subverting expectations can work great when applied correctly, but Ryan just shoveled it in there like by the truckload and just ruined it, I think.
Yeah, well, and I think that what that goes back to is the fact that we just didn't get enough backstory or preparation. Like what they could have done. You remember how they had that whole Journey to the Force Awakens like books and comics and all that?
Mm-hmm.
If they wouldn't even have to do it in a book. If they had done like a comic series where Luke starts to get a little bit disappointed and despondent, kind of prep you for it a little bit, and maybe that Journey to the Last Jedi, it sort of solidifies that, because you also have to look at the fact too, and this goes to your point, even though you didn't really touch on it too much, is the fact that he has to be feeling a horrible betrayal and failure when it comes to Kylo, because this is his nephew, and I mean Leia and Han's son, who these are like family to him.
Yeah, they trusted him to keep him, but it's like not only that, but it's kind of like you understand. He understands who he was wielding. Like you have another Skywalker. He knows how strong the bloodline. He knows how powerful his father was, how powerful he is, how powerful Leia is. So now, Ben Solo has his power. So, okay, if he goes to the dark side, it's almost kind of like a Skywalker can't go to the dark side because it's over with. Because now you have this whole... You got another Vader situation,
well,
and that's what everybody
can I
is
just
going
take this
for.
point to interject that Kylo is hands down one of my favorite characters of the sequel trilogy.
Oh yeah, definitely, because he was hilarious.
He was hilarious. He was unhinged, and you never really saw a Sith Lord quite like it, even though he technically wasn't a Sith Lord per se. But you never really saw anybody quite like him. He was kind of like an emo, whiny, emotional Vader. It was kind of a different. It was almost like this really unglued, unhinged guy, but that had an immense amount of power.
Yeah, I always called him like Eminem with the Force. I mean, that's basically what it's like.
And yes, Kylo's Saving Grace sequel might be absolutely. And I felt, okay, here's a question for you guys. What did you think about his redemption? Because now for me, I'll tell you guys where I stand on this. And I know you and I have talked about this. I think you pretty much feel the same way. Is that I didn't really want him to be redeemed.
No.
You know, I really did not want another Vader kind of a story arc going, but I have to say that when I saw it, I was really into it. It made me see, like, oh, man, I really want to see a Ben Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was kind of cool when he was redeemed. And I like the fact that he was once... It's different to me than if I just saw the adventures of Ben Solo before he turned into Kylo. It was more like, okay, he was a dark side user. Now he's come back to the light. I wish they hadn't killed him off, because I think that they could have told some really interesting stories after the fact.
True. I think the cool thing about we all kind of knew that he was going to get redeemed. It was just a matter of how.
Right.
One thing I think that JJ did very well with this was he kind of prefaced his redemption by what Rey did earlier in that sand dune with the snake.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, okay, what the heck is she? But the fact is, like, okay, she healed a snake using light side, powerful light side abilities, healing abilities. The fact that he was already mortally wounded. He was about to die, but she saved him by pumping a bunch of light side energy into him when he was already conflicted by the light side to begin with.
Exactly.
So that's what
that
took
everybody
him over
misses.
the edge
Yep.
in that realm, and I thought that was like, okay.
Not to mention the fact that
creative.
Leia was already sending her little light side vibes to him as well. And I think you're right. I think those two things converged.
And that's what brought him back. And then
Yeah.
I will say, like, one of the things I have to give to Adam Driver is the way he played Kylo, as he was more just angry and irritated most of the time. Like, he was just like, what girl? And, you know, he's like...
He was.
And then just snatching people up and, you know, like his stuff with Hux and everything like that.
Oh, man, his whole like thing with Hux. I could watch a show on those guys.
But... And even like when you see him earlier, when he lifts that guy up, you know, at that basically board meeting they had.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of harkened back, of course, to the whole Vader thing, you know.
But yet a more unhinged, unglued version
of it. And it was like way more freaky. It was freakier because it was like almost like Nightmare on Elm Street type stuff. But so you see him like that. And then you realize when he goes to rescue Rey, and he jumps on that giant chain, and he's like, "Ow!" Like that was hilarious.
Best. That was actually one of my favorite lines in the whole movie when he jumps on that. And he's like, "Ow!"
You know, and it's just kind of like, all right, that made it funny. It humanized him, and then of course, like one of my favorite is he didn't even say a word, but it's when he actually snatched the lightsaber from Rey behind his back. When the Knights of Ren was surrounded him, then he kind of does
that Han Solo,
like,
yeah.
shall we?
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing. Thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. And I was like, you know, but you could definitely see that the character shift between the two, but he played them two completely different ways. Like this one was more like kind of cocky but like in a fun, arrogant kind of way.
I mean, look, let's do it. Let's bring up the Saturday Night Live Matt the Radar Technician. I mean, to me, that was one of the most epic, greatest Kylo Ren performances ever.
Yeah.
And it just shows like Adam Driver's
range,
depth and range and everything else, that he could do all these different facets of the same character. I mean, it's
I killed your family.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, that's still like the funniest thing to me. Like,
yeah, he sent that card. I mean, that was hilarious.
Absolutely brilliant.
So he's young and confused, I think, twisted by manipulations in his prime. Yes, and if you actually read the comic series, The Rise of Kylo Ren, it perfectly. I think it makes sense he would be more unhinged than Vader. Absolutely. You see his development in that, and I'm really glad that they actually put that comic out because it was just incredible. And yes, Adam Driver is an absolutely amazing actor. In fact, there's a movie, I think it's on Prime, The Marriage Story he did with Scarlett Johansson. I haven't seen it yet, but everybody's raving about it. I think it was up for Oscars or something.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody is saying how great it is. You know, his character in Logan Lucky I thought was hilarious. Oh, he was in something else too. Because I mean, I can't help it. Every time I see him, I'm like, it's Kylo Ren, you know.
Yep.
But yet, then he plays somebody totally different, and it's
Even,
just
that Black Klansman.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Awesome in that.
He was, yeah. I mean, he's really good, and the thing that's funny is he just has this really good range.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he's a great actor, and he really brings 110% to every role that he plays, and it just shows you by when he's playing all these characters that are so different from the Kylo Ren character, it actually shows you how brilliant the Kylo Ren character is.
Yeah.
And how his performance of it, he's like the perfect guy to play that character. You know, it's very rare that you can say, I can't see any other actor playing this guy anymore.
Right.
Like if they, you know, he decided he never wanted to play Kylo again, they needed to recast him. Don't. He is Kylo Ren.
Yep.
No different than Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and of course Han Solo too. It's kind of like you can't just bring in like Tom Selleck to play, you know, Han Solo or Indiana Jones, because remember, he was up for Indiana Jones at first.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that those are the kinds of things that, define it. And I would just like to see more of that kind of a thing explored. And the reason why I say that they shouldn't have killed him off is because, first of all, I think that they could have done the whole because he was a dyad in the Force. Yeah, go ahead and actually have both of them defeat Palpatine. That would have made more sense to me. And it would have, to me, honored Palpatine's character a little bit more by it taking both of them to defeat him. That's number one. Number two, one of the things that I thought would have been cool if they had let Vader survive, that they could have done the same thing with Kylo, is I always wanted to see in Star Wars a situation where let's see these guys who were once these ultimate evil guys now have to face, okay, I'm good now. Well, how's the universe going to react to that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, how are you going to interact? Because you remember in another Claudia Gray book, Bloodline, there's a point in that novel where the Senate and everybody in the New Republic finds out that Leia was Vader's daughter, and instantly everybody turns on her because she was the daughter of Vader. So it's kind of like, that gives you a little bit of a glimpse onto, well, what would have happened if Vader was the one that was like, hey, I was Anakin Skywalker. I was like this really heroic Jedi Knight, so kind of back to being that now. So,
do you have the suit in white?
We're kind of cool now. So I'm like on your side. So you guys can like me. It's cool. You know, that wouldn't happen.
All right.
And I honestly think that would have been, you know, something that would have been really worth exploring. All right. Well, I think it's time to wrap up this show. I'm almost out of water. My light burned out a long time ago. I think next time I'm going to prepare. I hope you guys actually join us next week, because this is a really good discussion. And this right here is the kinds of things that we like to do. You know, we come up with some of these topics that we want to discuss. But again, we don't have to stick to them. You know, we can go and veer off of them. We could just have a discussion. This is all about talking Star Wars with you guys. So, you know, if you like what you guys saw here, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You know, hit that like button on this video. Follow us on YouTube, Twitch. You know, join our Facebook groups. I know I'm going to give you guys like the shopping list of all the social media, but, you know, you get the idea. It was a really fun discussion. Deepy Dishy, White Elephant, thank you guys so much for, you know, this great, incredible chat. I hope we see you guys again next time. Yes, thank you. Let me get that comment up before we go off here. Yes, try your best to be here next time. It was great. We love chatting about Star Wars. This is why we do this show. And can you imagine? Shameless plug, but tell all your friends.
Yep.
You know, bring everybody into this discussion. You know, I mean, we're gonna be here every Friday, 8:00. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.